You are in a quiet coffee shop, or perhaps a subway car humming with motion, a space filled with the anonymous rhythm of life. You see countless faces, each a story you will never know, a universe unto itself. And then, it happens. Your eyes meet someone else's across the room, just for a moment. It isn't attraction, not in the usual sense. It is a strange, inexplicable feeling. A flicker of recognition for a soul you've never met. Or maybe a sudden quiet wave of discomfort for no reason at all. The connection breaks, the moment passes, but a question lingers in the air, silent and profound. Why them? Out of the thousands of people you could have seen, out of the billions on this planet, why did your orbit, your specific line of sight, intersect with theirs, in this place, at this precise time? This fleeting feeling is a microcosm of a much larger, more pervasive sense of confusion in our modern lives. We live in a world more connected than ever, yet we often feel profoundly alone, adrift in a sea of faces. Our relationships, the very things meant to give us meaning and solace, so often become our greatest sources of chaos, of suffering, of deep and bewildering pain. We wrestle endlessly with the same questions, whispered in the dark of night. Why did this person betray me? Why am I so drawn to that person, even when I know they are not right for me? What is the meaning of this encounter, this love, this loss? Or is there no meaning at all? Are we all just particles bouncing off each other in a cold, indifferent universe? This constant questioning, this pressure to connect, to succeed in our relationships, and the deep fear of being left behind creates a steady, humming undercurrent of anxiety that runs beneath the surface of everything we do. But for thousands of years, a tradition of wisdom has looked directly into the heart of these questions. It is not a religion that demands blind faith, but rather a science of the mind, a practical path to understanding the true nature of reality and of our connections with one another. Buddhism teaches a simple, yet radical idea. There are no accidental meetings. Every single person you encounter, from the love of your life to the stranger who cuts you off in traffic, is a mirror. They are a teacher. They are a perfect reflection of a seed planted long ago, a karmic echo from your own past, and a new seed being planted for your future. This journey we are about to take is an exploration into that profound truth. It is a quest to find the hidden meaning behind the soul, encounters that shape our lives, and to discover that the key to peace is not found in changing the people we meet, but in fundamentally understanding ourselves. To truly begin our journey, we must first approach a word that is both widely known and deeply misunderstood. That word is karma. In the Western mind, karma has often been simplified, flattened into a kind of cosmic justice system, a universal scoreboard of right and wrong, where good deeds earn you points and bad deeds ensure a swift, almost vengeful punishment. We hear it in casual conversation. Karma's a beast, spoken after someone who wronged us experiences misfortune. But this idea of karma as a watchful judge dealing out rewards and retributions misses the profound, impersonal, and liberating truth of the concept. To understand its real meaning, we must return to its source. The Sanskrit word karma literally means action or deed. That is all. It is not a moral law imposed from the outside by a deity or a cosmic force. It is a natural law, as fundamental and as neutral as gravity. Karma is simply the law of cause and effect applied to our intentions and actions. Every action you perform, every word you speak, and most importantly, every thought you think, is a cause. Each one is a seed that you plant in the fertile field of your own consciousness. Imagine your mind, or more accurately, your stream of consciousness, as a vast and endless field. With every intentional act, you are a farmer, sowing seeds. When you act out of kindness, generosity, or compassion, you are planting the seeds of wholesome fruit, like an apple or a pear. When you speak a word of encouragement to someone who is struggling, you plant a seed. When you feel a genuine wish for another's well-being, you plant a seed. Conversely, when you act from a place of anger, jealousy, or selfishness, you are planting the seeds of thorns and poison ivy. A harsh word spoken in anger is a seed. A thought of resentment you hold onto is a seed. A selfish act committed at another's expense is a seed. These seeds do not simply vanish after the moment has passed. They are deposited into the deep soil of your mind stream, where they lie dormant, carrying the full potential of their origin. They are not a mark in a logbook, but a living energy, a potentiality waiting for the right conditions to sprout. So what are these conditions? The conditions are your life, the circumstances you find yourself in, the world you perceive, and most profoundly, the people who enter your life are the sun, the rain, and the seasons that cause these dormant seeds to ripen and bear their inevitable fruit. The fruit of karma is called vipaka. When you meet a person and the interaction is easy, supportive, and uplifting, you are experiencing the fruit of a wholesome seed you planted long ago. That supportive friend who appears just when you need them, that stranger who shows you a small, unexpected kindness, that partner with whom you share a deep and effortless understanding. These are not accidents. They are the blossoming of your own past goodness. You are, in a very real sense, meeting a past version of yourself, receiving the echo of a kindness you once gave away freely. And what of the difficult encounters? What of the boss who seems to belittle you? The friend who betrays your trust? The family member with whom every conversation becomes a battle? This is where the true, transformative power of understanding karma lies. The conventional view would be to see these people as antagonists, as the source of your suffering. But from a karmic perspective, they are messengers. They are the rain and sun that are causing the thorny, painful seeds from your own past to sprout. The irritation you feel from their actions is the fruit of a seed of anger you once planted. The pain of betrayal you experience is the ripening of a seed of harm, however small, that you once caused. This is not a call to blame yourself or to passively accept abuse. It is a radical shift in perspective. It moves the focus from, what is this person doing to me, to, what is this experience trying to teach me about myself? The person is not the ultimate cause of your suffering. They are the condition that allows a pre-existing cause within you to come to fruition. They are delivering a message from your past self, giving you a precious, if painful, opportunity to see the results of your own actions and to finally be free from them. This brings us to the most vital point. Karma is not a prison. It is not a fixed, unchangeable destiny that condemns you to repeat the same patterns forever. While you are the inheritor of your past actions, you are the absolute creator of your present and future. Your freedom lies in this very moment, in how you choose to respond to the ripening fruits of your past. When you are faced with a difficult person, a painful situation, the karmic cycle presents you with a choice. You can react with the old patterns, with anger, resentment, and blame. In doing so, you take the thorny fruit, eat it, and plant its seeds all over again, ensuring that you will meet this same energy, this same difficult dynamic, in a different form, with a different person, somewhere down the road. Or you can choose to stop. You can choose to practice patience. You can try to generate a moment of understanding, a sliver of compassion for the person in front of you. recognizing that they too are trapped in their own karmic cycles. In that moment of conscious, intentional response, you break the chain. You refuse to plant another thorny seed. You begin to cultivate a new kind of garden. There is no story that illustrates this power of transformation more starkly than that of Angulimala. His name alone struck terror into the hearts of all who heard it, for it meant finger necklace. He was a fearsome bandit, a murderer who haunted the forests and collected a finger from each of his victims, stringing them into a gruesome garland he wore around his neck. He was the embodiment of a life spent sowing the most terrible of karmic seeds. One day, the Buddha learned that Angulimala, in his murderous quest, was about to kill his own mother. Seeing the immense tragedy of this, but also seeing the faint, dormant seed of goodness that lay buried deep within the killer's heart, the Buddha set out, walking calmly and alone into the forest where Angulimala lived. Angulimala saw the serene monk approaching and thought it an easy target. He began to run, but a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala could not catch up to him. Exhausted and bewildered, he shouted from a distance, "Stop, monk! Stop!" The Buddha, without breaking his stride, turned his head and replied with a voice of perfect calm, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." These words struck Angulimala like lightning. What could this mean? The monk was clearly still walking, while he, Angulimala, was the one who had stopped running. "What do you mean, monk?" he asked. The Buddha explained, "I have stopped, for I have laid down the sword. I have ceased harming living beings. I have stopped creating the causes of suffering. You, Angulimala, are still running. You are running on the wheel of your own hatred, your own violence, a cycle of action that will only bring you endless pain. You have not stopped." In that single encounter, in that moment of profound truth, the conditions were finally right for the tiny, wholesome seed within Angulimala to sprout. The compassion and fearlessness of the Buddha were the water and sun it had been waiting for. He saw the horrific truth of his own life, the endless cycle of violence he was perpetuating. He threw down his sword, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and asked to become a monk. He was accepted into the order, but his karmic debt was not magically erased. The fruits of his past actions still had to ripen. When he would walk into the villages for alms, the same people who once fled from him in terror now threw stones and sticks at him, shouting curses. He would return to the monastery, bleeding and bruised. The Buddha would tell him to bear it with patience. "You are experiencing the results of your actions now, in this life," he would say. "Had you not changed your path, this same karma would have caused you immeasurable suffering for eons in lower realms." Angulimala endured. He cultivated his mind, and through immense effort, he cleared the field of his consciousness. The man who was once a feared murderer eventually became an arhat, a fully awakened being, completely free from suffering. Angulimala's story is our story. We may not wear a necklace of fingers, but we all carry the weight of our past actions, our harsh words, our selfish thoughts. His journey proves that no one is defined by their past. Your karmic history is not a life sentence. It is a curriculum. Every person you meet is a part of that curriculum. They are the pop quizzes and the final exams. They are the result of what you have done. And more importantly, they are the opportunity to decide who you are going to be right now. We understand then that our encounters are the echoes of our past actions. But this raises an even deeper question. What is the mechanism? How does a kind thought I had 5 years ago somehow weave itself through the fabric of reality to manifest as a helpful stranger today? How does the invisible energy of my intention connect to the tangible reality of the person standing right in front of me? To answer this, We must go beyond the law of action and look at the very blueprint of existence itself. We must explore the beautiful, intricate, and inescapable web that connects us all. If the law of karma explains the what, that our actions are seeds which ripen into the encounters of our lives, then the teaching of dependent origination explains the how. It is the universal mechanism, the intricate and profound blueprint that governs the unfolding of all reality. This teaching, known in Pali as Paticcasamuppada, is often considered the heart of the Buddha's wisdom, his deepest insight into the nature of existence. It moves us beyond a simple, linear idea of cause and effect into a vision of reality as a vast, shimmering web of interconnectedness, where nothing exists in isolation and everything arises in dependence upon everything else. At its core is a simple, elegant formula. Because this is, that is. Because this arises, that arises. Because this is not, that is not. Because this ceases, that ceases. This is not an abstract philosophical claim. It is a description of how things truly are. Consider a flower. We look at it and see a single, distinct object. We give it a name, a rose, a tulip, a lily. But the Buddha asks us to look more deeply. Where is the flower? Is it in the petals, the stem, the roots? If we begin to deconstruct it, we find it is made entirely of non-flower elements. It is made of sunshine, without which there would be no photosynthesis. It is made of the rain cloud, without which there would be no water. It is made of the soil and its minerals. It is made of the farmer who planted the seed and the bee that pollinated its ancestor. The flower, in its essence, is with the entire cosmos. It cannot exist as a separate, independent entity. It depends on everything else for its existence. Because the sun is, the flower can be. Because the rain ceases, the flower will cease. This is the web of dependent origination. Now, let us apply this profound insight to our relationships, to the very fabric of our human encounters. We live our lives from the unquestioned assumption of a separate self. There is me inside my skin, and there is you, the other, outside your skin. This fundamental division is the source of all our conflict, our loneliness, and our fear. Dependent origination invites us to see through this illusion. The concept of me cannot exist without the concept of an other. My very identity as a self is defined only in relation to what I perceive as not self. Like the North Pole and the South Pole of a magnet, they are different, but they cannot exist independently. They arise together, codependently. Let's take this to a more personal level. When we feel hurt by someone, we create a story with a clear villain and a clear victim. He hurt me. She betrayed me. In this story, there is an external agent, the perpetrator, who has inflicted pain upon a separate entity, me. But if we look with the eyes of dependent origination, the picture dissolves. The identity of the one who hurts cannot arise without the co-arising identity of the one who feels hurt. They are two ends of the same experiential stick. The spoken word is the cause, but the ear that hears it, the mind that interprets it, the personal history that gives it a painful meaning, these are all indispensable conditions. The event of being hurt is a co-creation. It is born from the meeting of two streams of causes and conditions. Their stream led them to speak the word. Our stream led us to be in a position to hear it and to react in the way we did. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it removes the singular, personal blame that creates so much bitterness. It allows us to see the situation not as a personal attack, but as the impersonal unfolding of causes and conditions, a process in which we are both participants. The Buddha mapped this process in extraordinary detail through what is known as the 12 links of dependent origination. This is not an academic list, but the story of how a moment of suffering, of a painful encounter, is born. The chain begins not with an external event, but deep in the past, with its first link, ignorance. This is not a lack of knowledge, but a fundamental misperception of reality. The core belief that we are a solid, separate, enduring self. Because of this ignorance, the second link arises, karmic formations. We act, speak, and think in ways designed to protect and enhance this illusory self, creating the karmic seeds we spoke of earlier. These past actions propel a stream of consciousness into a new existence, giving rise to the subsequent links, a new consciousness, which in turn conditions the mind and body, the 6 senses, and so on. Let us fast forward to the present moment, where the chain manifests in a real-life encounter. The 6th link is contact. Our eyes see a person, our ears hear their words. This contact is neutral, but immediately, conditioned by our past, the 7th link arises, feeling. We automatically label the experience as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Here is the crucial turning point. If the feeling is unpleasant, the 8th link, craving, arises. We crave for the unpleasantness to go away. This craving solidifies into the 9th link, clinging. We cling to our sense of being wronged. We replay the conversation in our minds. We feed our resentment. We fully invest in the story of me who has been hurt by you. This clinging is the fuel, the glue that solidifies our suffering. And this clinging ensures the chain continues, leading to becoming, the 10th link, which guarantees a future birth, the 11th, and inevitably, more aging and death and sorrow, the 12th. An entire universe of suffering is born from a single moment of unmindful contact, all rooted in an ancient ignorance. You see the person who has caused you pain not as an isolated enemy, but as the final link in a chain that you yourself helped to forge long ago. To help us grasp this vast, intricate web, the ancient sages of India offered a beautiful and powerful metaphor, Indra's net. Imagine a celestial net that stretches out infinitely in all directions. It has no beginning and no end. At every single point where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, perfect, multifaceted crystal jewel. Because the net is infinite, the number of jewels is infinite. Now, the magical quality of this net is that if you were to look closely at the polished surface of any one jewel, you would see reflected in it every other jewel in the entire net. Not just that, but within each reflection in that single jewel, you would find the reflections of all the other jewels, and so on, forever. It is a universe of infinite, mutual reflection. Each one of us, every living being, every atom, is one of these jewels. You are a jewel. The person you love is a jewel. The stranger you pass on the street is a jewel. The person who challenges you the most is also a jewel. You exist as an individual, yet your entire surface reflects all of existence, and the entirety of existence reflects you. When you smile at a stranger, your jewel sends a glimmer of light that is reflected in every other jewel in the cosmos. When you cause harm, a shadow is cast that subtly darkens the entire net. To touch one jewel is to make the whole net shimmer. There is no such thing as a truly isolated act. The stranger is not strange. They are a part of your own being that you have not yet had the wisdom to recognize. Their joy is reflected in you. Your suffering is reflected in them. This vision of profound interconnectedness is the antidote to the modern plague of loneliness. It dissolves the hard boundaries we erect between ourselves and others. We are not separate islands colliding in a dark and empty ocean. We are waves in the same ocean, unique expressions of a single, unified reality. Our encounters are not the meeting of two separate entities, but ripples of cause and effect spreading through a shared field of being. With this understanding, a deep sense of responsibility and compassion naturally arises. But it also raises a new question. If this interconnected web is simply the nature of reality, and if suffering arises within this web, then where is the real problem? The problem cannot be with the web itself, for it is neutral. The problem must lie in our perception of it, in a fundamental misdiagnosis of our own condition within this web. This realization leads us directly to the doorstep of the Buddha's first and most famous teaching, the medical diagnosis for the human soul, the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. Having seen that we are all interconnected within an intricate web of cause and effect, we are now ready to face the Buddha's first great teaching. Before any cure can be offered, a clear diagnosis must be made. The Buddha, often called the Great Physician, did not begin his teaching with promises of heavenly bliss or complex philosophical theories. He began with a direct, honest, and unflinching look at the raw reality of our shared experience. This is the first noble truth, the truth of dukkha. This Pali word, dukkha, is most often translated as suffering, but this single English word is far too narrow, too heavy with connotations of relentless misery to capture its full meaning. It can give the impression that Buddhism is a pessimistic or morbid philosophy, one that sees life as only pain and sorrow. But this is a profound misunderstanding. Dukkha is not a judgment that life is bad. It is a compassionate and precise observation about the nature of our experience within it. It encompasses a vast spectrum of feeling, from the most intense physical and emotional agony to the most subtle, background hum of dissatisfaction, a feeling that things are just not quite right. To truly understand why we suffer in our relationships and in our lives, we must first understand the three distinct flavors, or levels, of this universal condition. The first level is the most obvious. It is dukkha as ordinary pain, the suffering of suffering, or dukkha dukkha. This is the pain that we all know intimately, the kind that needs no explanation. It is the sharp pang of a migraine, the chronic ache of a diseased body. It is the raw grief that tears through you when a loved one dies. It is the sting of betrayal when a partner is unfaithful, the hollow loneliness of being misunderstood by your own family, the anxiety of facing financial ruin. In our encounters with others, this is the dukkha of conflict, of harsh words, of rejection and abandonment. It is the pain that we spend most of our energy trying to avoid, to fix, or to numb. When we seek spiritual answers, it is often this kind of suffering that drives us, the raw and undeniable wounds of life that compel us to search for a deeper meaning, a way out of the pain. This first level of dukkha is the presenting symptom of the human condition. It is real, it is valid, and it is a shared experience that connects us all in our vulnerability. The second level of dukkha is far more subtle and in many ways more pervasive. It is the pain of change, or viparinama dukkha. This is the suffering that is cleverly hidden within our happiness. It is the anxiety that lurks beneath our moments of joy. Consider the beginning of a new romantic relationship. It is a time of bliss, excitement, and a feeling of intoxicating completeness. You feel seen, understood, and cherished. This is happiness. So where could suffering possibly be found here? The Buddha would point out that the dukkha is woven into the very fabric of that happiness because it is impermanent. On some deep, intuitive level, we know that this peak intensity will not last forever. This knowledge, even if unconscious, creates a subtle anxiety, a desperate need to cling to the feeling, to freeze the moment in time. We try to grasp the beautiful butterfly of joy, and in the very act of closing our fist, we crush it. Then, inevitably, the relationship evolves. The initial rush of novelty fades, and the dynamic settles into a new, perhaps deeper, but less exciting phase. It is at this point that the pain of change arises. We compare the present reality to our memory of that initial peak, and we feel a sense of lack, of disappointment. The happiness itself has become the source of our new suffering, not because it was flawed, but simply because it changed, and we demanded that it stay the same. This applies to every pleasant experience in our lives. The beautiful sunset ends. The perfect vacation is over. A great success at work is followed by new challenges. The very fleeting nature of our joy contains the seed of this second, more insidious kind of suffering. This leads us to the third and most profound level, the pain of conditioned existence, or sankhara, dukkha. This is the foundational dissatisfaction, the background hum of unease that permeates every moment of our lives, simply because we are conditioned beings living in a conditioned world. As we saw with dependent origination, everything we experience, our bodies, our thoughts, our feelings, our relationships, arises from a web of causes and conditions. Nothing is solid, permanent, or exists on its own. Everything is in a state of constant flux. Sankhara dukkha is the fundamental friction between our deepest desire for security, permanence, and a solid sense of self, and the stark, fluid, and relentlessly impermanent nature of reality. It is the deep existential ache of trying to build a permanent home on shifting sands. Even in the most stable, loving, and secure relationship, sankhara dukkha is present. It is the quiet, background knowledge that you will change, your partner will change, and that one day you will inevitably be separated by circumstance or death. It is the feeling of being a self that is not a solid entity, but a constantly changing process of thoughts, feelings, and sensations, always trying to find a solid footing where none can be found. We often try to drown out this deep, existential hum with noise, with distraction, with endless seeking, but it is always there, beneath the surface, reminding us that everything we cling to is ultimately unreliable. The story of Kisa Gotami is perhaps the most poignant illustration of this journey into understanding dukkha. She was a young woman whose first and only child had died. Lost in a storm of grief and denial, she refused to accept his death. Clutching the small, cold body of her son, she wandered from house to house, frantically begging for a medicine that could bring him back to life. People thought she had lost her mind. Finally, a wise man took pity on her and advised her to go and see the Buddha. She ran to him, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded for a cure. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion. He did not dismiss her delusion. Instead, he gave her a task. "There is only one medicine that can help," he said. "But to make it, I need an ingredient. I need you to bring me a single mustard seed." Kisa Gotami's eyes lit up with hope. "But," the Buddha added, "there is one condition. The mustard seed must come from a house where no one-and-no parent, no child, no spouse, no servanthas ever died." Filled with a desperate hope, She began her quest immediately. She went to the first house she saw. "The Buddha has sent me for a mustard seed to cure my son," she explained. "Of course," the family replied, "take what you need." As they offered her the seeds, she remembered the condition and asked, "Has anyone in this house ever died?" The family's faces fell. "Alas," they said, "the living are few, but the dead are many. We lost our beloved father just last year." With a heavy heart, Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. "We have plenty of mustard seeds, but we lost our mother. I lost my husband. Our youngest child was taken from us." House after house, she heard the same refrain of loss. As the sun began to set, and she sat by the roadside, with empty hands, the truth finally began to dawn on her, not as an intellectual concept, but as a deep, visceral reality. Her pain, which had felt so singular, so isolating, was not hers alone. It was the universal anthem of the human heart. The pain of loss, the suffering of change, was woven into the very fabric of existence. She had not found a house untouched by death, because there was no such thing. She returned to the Buddha without the mustard seed, but with a new and profound understanding. She was no longer a woman lost in the private delusion of her own grief. She had touched the shared heart of humanity. She had seen the first noble truth for herself. This diagnosis, this brave and honest naming of our condition, is not a message of despair. It is a message of profound hope. A great physician, after delivering a difficult diagnosis, does not walk away. The very act of naming the illness is the first, most crucial step toward a cure. It tells us we are not crazy, that our pain is real, and that we are not alone. By having the courage to look squarely at the nature of dukkha in all its forms, we are no longer fighting shadows in the dark. We know the nature of our ailment. And so, the next logical question naturally arises, the question that every patient asks their doctor: if this is the illness, what is its cause? This question paves the way for the second noble truth, the search for the origin of our deep and pervasive discontent. Once a physician has made a clear diagnosis, the next crucial step is to identify the cause of the ailment, having looked directly at the universal condition of dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. The Buddha did not point to an external source. He did not blame the gods, the stars, the structure of society, or other people. In what is perhaps the most revolutionary and empowering psychological insight in human history, he turned the lens inward. The second noble truth, the truth of the origin of suffering, states that the root cause of our discontent is not what happens to us, but a powerful, relentless force within our own minds. This force is called tanha, a Pali word that translates as thirst, craving, or grasping. It is a burning, insatiable thirst that keeps us running, seeking, and clinging, fueling the very engine of dukkha. It is the deep, internal friction between the way things are and the way we demand them to be. To understand how this thirst poisons our relationships and our lives, we must examine its three primary forms. The first and most familiar form is kama tanha, the craving for sense pleasures. Our bodies are equipped with 6 senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and the mind itself, which experiences thoughts and emotions. These senses make contact with the world, and we crave for those contacts to be pleasant. This is the driving force behind much of human behavior. We crave delicious food, beautiful music, and pleasant aromas. In our relationships, this craving manifests powerfully. We crave the pleasant sight of our beloved's face, the comforting sound of their voice, the warmth of their embrace. We crave the feeling of being wanted, the validation of praise, the admiration of our peers. There is nothing inherently wrong with these experiences. The problem, the root of suffering, lies not in the pleasure itself, but in the craving for it. When we don't have these pleasant experiences, we suffer from a sense of lack and longing. When we do have them, we suffer from the underlying fear that they will end, which, as we know, they always do. We become addicts, and we turn other people into our dealers. We are not truly loving a person in their wholeness. We are loving the pleasant feelings they provide. They become a means to an end, the end being the satisfaction of our own sensory thirst. When they fail to provide the fix we crave, we become resentful, disappointed, and feel that they have failed us, never realizing that the demand itself was the original error. The second form of this thirst is deeper and more tied to our ego. It is bhava tanha, the craving for existence or for becoming. This is not just the simple instinct for survival. It is the deep psychological thirst to be something, to have a solid and lasting identity. We crave to exist as a person who is loved, respected, successful, or righteous. Our relationships then become the primary stage upon which we attempt to construct and perform this identity. We don't just want a partner, we want to be a perfect husband or a devoted wife. We want to be seen as part of a power couple. The relationship is no longer a dance between two people. It is a project to prop up the fragile structure of our ego. This kind of craving creates immense suffering because it makes us utterly dependent on others to validate our chosen identity. We need our partner to behave in a specific way so that we can continue to feel good about who we are. If they criticize us, it doesn't just hurt our feelings, it threatens our very existence as a good person. If a friend succeeds where we have failed, it threatens our identity as a successful individual. We live in constant, low-grade fear that the world will not reflect back to us the image of ourselves we so desperately want to maintain. We are clinging to a ghost, and we demand that everyone around us pretend that the ghost is real. The third form of this thirst is the mirror image of the second. It is vibhava tanha, the craving for non-existence or for annihilation. This is the thirst to get rid of what is unpleasant. It is the voice of aversion, the powerful urge to push away, destroy, or escape from painful feelings, situations, or people. When a relationship encounters conflict, vibhava tanha is the impulse that screams, "I'm out of here. I can't deal with this." It is the desire to immediately end the conversation, slam the door, or break up, all in an effort to annihilate the painful feeling of the moment. When we are overcome with shame or failure, this is the dark whisper that wishes we could just disappear, that the self experiencing this pain would cease to exist. This, too, is a form of craving. It is not calm acceptance, but a violent thirst for relief, a craving for a state of nothingness, to escape the dukkha of the present moment. This drive is the root of avoidance, of suppression, of addiction, and of all the destructive ways we try to run from our own inner experience. We believe that if we can just eliminate the external trigger, the feeling will go away, never realizing that the thirst itself will simply find a new object to push against. Looking at these three faces of tanha, the pull towards pleasure, the clinging to self, and the push away from pain, we can see a common thread. The source of the problem is always internal. The world happens. People act according to their own causes and conditions, but the suffering is generated by our reaction, by our own mental thirst. An ancient Buddhist teaching compares this to being struck by two arrows. The first arrow is the painful event itself, a harsh word, a betrayal, a loss. This first arrow is painful, but it is often unavoidable. It is part of life. The second arrow is the one we shoot into ourselves. It is our reaction to the first arrow. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. It is the endless loop of blame, the resentment we nurse for days, the self-pity, the clinging to how things should have been. This second arrow is our tanha, and it is the one that causes the most profound and lasting suffering. The first arrow creates pain. The second arrow creates suffering. There is a simple and powerful parable that illustrates this self-imprisoning nature of our own craving. In parts of Asia, a traditional method for trapping a monkey involves a coconut. The trappers cut a hole in the coconut, just large enough for a monkey's open hand to slide through. They drill another hole to anchor the coconut to a tree with a rope, and then they place a sweet rice cake or some nuts inside. Soon, a monkey will come along, drawn by the scent of the treat. It will slide its slender hand through the opening and grasp the prize. Now, with the rice clutched in its fist, it tries to withdraw its hand, but the fist, clenched around the prize, is now too large to pass back through the narrow opening. The monkey is trapped. It pulls and shrieks. It thrashes against the rope, growing more and more frantic and terrified. But it is not truly trapped by the coconut or the rope. It is trapped by its own fist. The cage is its own craving. At any moment, all the monkey has to do to be completely free is to simply unclench its fist, to let go of the rice. But its desire, its tanha, is so strong that it cannot bring itself to do it. It will hold on to the cause of its imprisonment until the trappers arrive. We are that monkey. The situations and relationships in our lives are the coconut. The expectations we have, the identities we build, the pleasures we seek, and the pains we avoid, these are the sweet rice. We grasp them so tightly, believing they are essential for our happiness, that we imprison ourselves. We struggle against our partner, our boss, or our circumstances, believing they are the source of our confinement, never seeing that the walls of our prison are built from the very substance of our own clinging. Freedom is not found by breaking the coconut. It is found by simply unclenching the mind. This second noble truth, then, is not a cause for despair. It is the most hopeful news we could ever receive. If the cause of our suffering were truly external, if it were truly other people, bad luck, or an unjust world, we would be forever helpless, powerless victims of circumstance. But because the cause is internal, because it is our own thirst, it means the solution is also internal. The cure is within our own grasp. The power to end our suffering lies not in changing the world, but in transforming our own minds. If suffering has a clear cause, then it follows that if we can remove the cause, the suffering itself must cease. This irrefutable logic opens the door to the third noble truth, the extraordinary and liberating possibility that an end to suffering is not just a dream, but an attainable reality. Having diagnosed the illness of existence as dukkha, and having identified its root cause as the internal fire of tanha, or craving, the great physician now delivers the prognosis. And here, in the third noble truth, lies the most profoundly hopeful message in all of spiritual inquiry. The prognosis is not terminal. The condition is not permanent. The illness is curable. The third noble truth is the truth of Nirodha, a Pali word that means cessation. It is the simple, logical, and liberating conclusion that if suffering arises from a cause, then when that cause is removed, the suffering must also cease. If the raging fire of dukkha is fueled by the constant addition of craving, then when the fuel is withheld, the fire must inevitably go out. This is not a matter of faith or belief. It is a law of nature. It is the radical possibility of a complete and final end to our discontent. Before we explore what this cessation is, it is vital to understand what it is not. To the Western mind, conditioned to believe that desire and passion are the very engines of a life worth living, the idea of the cessation of craving can sound terrifying. It can conjure images of a bland, colorless existence, a life rendered passionless and inert, reducing a human being to an emotionless, disengaged automaton. It can sound like a spiritual death. This interpretation, however, comes from a deep misunderstanding of what is actually ceasing. Nirodha is not the cessation of joy, of love, or of life itself. It is the cessation of the fever, of the frantic, anxious, and painful thirst that underlies our ordinary experience of life. Imagine you are wandering in a desert, dying of thirst. Your entire being is consumed by a desperate, agonizing craving for water. When you finally find an oasis and drink, the feeling is one of exquisite relief. The cessation of that burning thirst is not an empty nothingness. It is a state of profound well-being, of contentment. Nirodha is like this. It is the quenching of the soul's deepest thirst. It is the mind returning to its natural state of health, clarity, and coolness, finally free from the illness of incessant wanting. This state of profound inner peace is fundamentally different from the fleeting happiness we usually pursue. Ordinary happiness is conditional. It depends entirely on external circumstances aligning with our desires. We feel happy if our partner praises us, if we get the promotion, if our children behave, if the weather is good. This kind of happiness is fragile, unreliable, and constantly at the mercy of a world we cannot control. The peace of Nirodha, however, is unconditional. It does not arise from getting what you want, but from the radical freedom of no longer needing things to be different than they are. It is a deep and unshakable contentment that comes from within, independent of the ever-shifting circumstances of life. When this state is applied to our relationships, the transformation is total. Without the peace of Nirodha, our well-being is held hostage by the people in our lives. We are tossed about on the turbulent waves of their moods, their actions, and their opinions. We need them to be a certain way for us to feel okay. We need their approval, their affection, their consistency. When they provide it, we feel a temporary security. When they don't, we are plunged into anxiety, anger, or despair. But when you touch the peace of cessation, you are no longer a ship at the mercy of these waves. You have found your own anchor. Your sense of well-being is self-sufficient. This does not mean you become indifferent or uncaring. On the contrary, it allows you to engage with people more fully and authentically, because your interaction is no longer contaminated by a desperate, underlying need for them to fix your own inner lack. This state of ultimate peace and freedom is known as nirvana or nibbana in Pali. Again, we must clear away a thicket of misconceptions. Nirvana is not a heavenly paradise, not a geographical location you go to after you die. It is a psychological reality that can be realized right here, right now, in this very life. The Buddha spoke of it as the deathless, not because the physical body ceases to die, but because one has awakened to a dimension of consciousness that is unborn, unconditioned, and uncreated. It is to touch a reality that was never caught in the cycle of birth and death, which is fueled by craving and ignorance. It is to find true refuge, a place of safety that cannot be shaken by the gains and losses of the world. The most powerful metaphor the Buddha used for nirvana was that of an extinguished fire. Our ordinary mind, he said, is on fire. It is ablaze with the fire of greed, the fire of hatred, and the fire of delusion. These fires are hot, agitating, and consuming. They create a constant state of internal turmoil, and they are always demanding more fuel, more sensory pleasures, more ego validation, more things to push against. Think of what happens when a flame is extinguished. It doesn't go anywhere. A flame that goes out on your west wall has not traveled north, south, or east. It has simply ceased to be, because the conditions that supported it, fuel and oxygen, have been removed. The state that remains is not an empty void. It is coolness. It is stillness. It is peace. This is the meaning of nirvana. The word itself is thought to mean to extinguish or to cool. It is the complete cooling of the fevers of the mind, a final and lasting peace that is the very opposite of annihilation. This leads to a crucial question for our journey. If you extinguish the fire of craving, can you still love? Does this profound peace mean an end to the warmth of human connection? The answer is that you can finally love in a way that is truly free, pure, and boundless. The love that arises from tanha, from craving, is always transactional at its core. It is a contracted, self-serving emotion. It says, I love you because you make me feel good. I need you to complete me. I love the way you see me. This love, like the monkey's grip on the rice, is a form of clinging. We are attached not to the person in their entirety, but to the role they play in the drama of our own needs. But when the thirst is gone, love is no longer a transaction. It is a radiation. It flows from a place of inner fullness, not from a place of lack. You no longer need the other person to be anything other than exactly who they are, because your own happiness is no longer dependent on them. You can love them through their moods, their imperfections, and their inevitable changes. You set them free from the impossible, crushing burden of being the source of your well-being. This is a love that is spacious, compassionate, and truly unconditional, liberating both yourself and the person you love. The third noble truth, therefore, stands as a luminous beacon of possibility in the center of our exploration. It assures us that our suffering, no matter how deep or how long it has been endured, is not an essential part of who we are. It is a conditional state, and it can be brought to an end. An unshakable peace, a love free from fear, and a life of profound meaning are not just fantasies. They are our birthright. We have followed the great physician this far. We have received the diagnosis, dukkha. We have understood the cause, tanha. And now, we have been given the incredible news that a complete cure is possible, nirodha. The final, practical question hangs in the air, filled with a new sense of urgency and hope. What is the prescription? What is the specific, step-by-step treatment plan that will lead me from the burning fires of craving to the supreme coolness of nirvana? This question brings us to the culmination of the Buddha's first teaching, the guide for the journey itself, the fourth noble truth, the practical path to the end of suffering. Having journeyed through the diagnosis of our condition as dukkha, identified its cause as the inner thirst of tanha, and glimpsed the liberating prognosis of nirodha, we arrive at the final and most practical part of the Buddha's teaching. We arrive at the prescription. If a doctor simply told you that you were ill, what caused it, and that a cure existed, but then sent you away with no treatment plan, you would be left in a state of hopeful despair. The fourth noble truth, the truth of the path, or magga, is that treatment plan. It is the comprehensive, step-by-step, and life-altering guide that leads from the shore of suffering to the far shore of liberation. This guide is the noble eightfold path, and it is a path to be walked, not just intellectually understood. It is a set of interwoven practices designed to gradually untangle the knots of our conditioning and transform every aspect of our lives, turning every encounter from a potential source of pain into a precious opportunity for awakening. It is crucial to understand that this is not a linear sequence of 8 steps you complete, one after another. It is a holistic path where all 8 factors are to be cultivated simultaneously, each one supporting and deepening the others. Imagine not a ladder, but a rope woven from 8 strong strands. The strength of the rope depends on the integrity of every strand working together. Or picture the spokes of a wheel, all radiating from a central hub and connecting to the rim. Each spoke is essential for the wheel to be strong, balanced, and capable of moving forward. For clarity, these 8 factors are traditionally grouped into 3 essential trainings: the training in wisdom, the training in ethical conduct, and the training in mental discipline. This threefold division forms the very architecture of the spiritual life. Wisdom provides the correct understanding and direction for our journey. Ethical conduct ensures that our outward actions in the world are harmonious and create the conditions for inner peace. And mental discipline is the inner work, the direct training of the mind itself, which allows it to become calm and clear enough for wisdom to fully penetrate our being. We begin with wisdom, for it is the compass that points the way. The division of wisdom consists of the first 2 path factors: right view and right intention. Right view, or samadhi, is the foundation of the entire path. It means seeing things not as we wish they were, or as we are conditioned to see them, but as they truly are. It is the development of a correct perspective. Without right view, our efforts on the path would be blind. We would be wandering in the dark without a map or a light. Right view itself has 2 levels of understanding. The first is the mundane level, which is the understanding of the law of karma. This is the simple but profound conviction that our actions have consequences, that wholesome actions lead to happiness and unwholesome actions lead to suffering. This view is the bedrock of a moral life. When we hold this view, we approach our encounters with a sense of responsibility. We understand that the difficult person in front of us is not an arbitrary tormentor, but in some way, the ripening of our own past actions. This knowledge prevents us from falling into blame and victimhood, and empowers us to act skillfully in the present to create a better future. The second, deeper level is the supramundane, right view. This is the direct, experiential insight into the ultimate nature of reality, as described by the 4 noble truths and the 3 marks of existence: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. This is where the path becomes truly transformational. When you look at a relationship through the lens of right view, you see its impermanence. You see that your partner, your feelings for them, and their feelings for you are all in a constant state of flux. Seeing this clearly, the frantic need to cling to the relationship, to freeze it in time, begins to dissolve. When you look at a painful conflict through the lens of right view, you see the truth of not self. You see that the I that feels so wounded is not a solid, continuous entity, but a fleeting collection of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. The personal sting of the insult loses its power when there is no permanent self for it to land on. Right view is the practice of consciously applying the wisdom we have been exploring to every lived moment, turning our life into a constant investigation of the truth. If right view is the compass that shows us the direction, then right intention, or sama sankalpa, is the act of turning the ship's wheel to align with that direction. It is our resolve, our aspiration, the why that motivates our journey. Our intentions shape our karma far more than our actions alone. A kind act done with a selfish intention creates a very different result than the same act done with a pure heart. The Buddha specified 3 types of right intention that we must cultivate. The first is the intention of renunciation. This is often misunderstood in the West as a grim resolve to give up all worldly pleasures. But its true meaning is far more subtle and liberating. It is the intention to let go. It is the conscious decision to renounce our clinging to pleasant experiences, to renounce our attachment to outcomes, and to renounce the endless, exhausting demands of the ego. In a relationship, it is the intention to let go of the need for your partner to be a certain way, to fulfill your every need, to be the source of your happiness. It is the inner resolve to unclench the monkey's fist. The second is the intention of loving kindness. This is the resolve to abandon ill will, anger, resentment, and aversion. It is the active cultivation of a heart of boundless goodwill towards all beings without exception, starting with ourselves. It means that when we enter any situation, our underlying intention is one of kindness. When we encounter a difficult person, our aim shifts from winning the argument or proving our point to finding a way to bring a moment of warmth and understanding to the interaction. It is the intention to be a source of peace in the world, rather than a source of conflict. The third is the intention of harmlessness. This is the deep resolve to cause no harm, to abandon cruelty and violence in all its forms, both physical and psychological. This intention is the wellspring of true compassion. It means we commit to not causing suffering, either to others or to ourselves. This applies not just to our outward actions, but to our inner world as well. We cease rehearsing angry conversations in our mind. We stop indulging in fantasies of revenge. We let go of the cruel inner critic that berates us for our shortcomings. Right intention purifies the very source of our actions, ensuring that our journey is motivated by wisdom, love, and compassion. This inner wisdom must then manifest outwardly in how we live and interact with others. This is the second training, the training in ethical conduct, or Shila. It consists of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. It is about living in a way that is blameless, harmonious, and supportive of our own and others' well-being. Right speech, or samavacha, acknowledges the immense power of our words to create either heaven or hell in our relationships. The Buddha outlined 4 specific aspects of right speech to cultivate. First, we abstain from lying. This means more than just not telling falsehoods. It means being trustworthy, reliable, and speaking from a place of integrity. Second, we abstain from divisive speech. This is the poison of gossip, slander, and words intended to set one person against another. Instead, we use our speech to promote harmony and reconciliation. Third, we abstain from harsh speech. This means refraining from insults, curses, shouting, and biting sarcasm, all the ways we use words as weapons. Instead, we cultivate a way of speaking that is gentle, kind, and pleasant to the ear. Fourth, we abstain from idle chatter. This is the mindless talk that fills time but serves no purpose, draining our own energy and that of others. Instead, we speak words that are meaningful, purposeful, and beneficial. Imagine the quality of your encounters if every word you spoke was filtered through these 4 gates. The trust and peace this would create is immeasurable. Right action, or samma kammanta, concerns our physical conduct. Like right speech, it is defined by what we abstain from. First, we abstain from taking life. This is the foundation of a reverence for all living beings, recognizing that all beings, like us, wish to live, and avoid pain. Second, we abstain from taking what is not given. This means not stealing, but it also extends to all forms of exploitation and dishonesty that stem from greed and a lack of respect for others' property. Third, we abstain from sexual misconduct. This means not causing harm through our sexuality, avoiding exploitation, coercion, and any actions that cause emotional or physical pain to ourselves or others through deceit and betrayal. Living by these principles creates a life of profound integrity. There is a deep peace that comes from knowing you have nothing to hide, a blamelessness that allows the mind to settle without being disturbed by guilt or remorse. Right livelihood, or sama ajiva, extends this ethical framework to the many hours we spend at work. It means earning our living in a way that does not cause harm and, ideally, contributes to the well-being of the world. The Buddha specifically advised against livelihoods based on deception or exploitation, such as trading in weapons, in living beings for slaughter, in intoxicants, or in poisons. In a modern context, this is a call to examine the impact of our professional life. Are we contributing to a more compassionate and sustainable world, or are we, even indirectly, participating in systems that cause harm? Choosing a livelihood that aligns with our deepest values allows our entire working life to become an integral part of our spiritual practice, rather than something separate from it. Finally, we come to the third training, the heart of the inner transformation, the training in mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the inner gymnasium where we directly train the mind to be stable, clear, and powerful. It consists of the final three path factors. Right effort, or sama vayama, is not about just gritting your teeth and trying hard. It is a skillful, fourfold approach to cultivating a wholesome mind. First, it is the effort to prevent unwholesome states, like anger or jealousy, from arising. We learn to recognize the triggers and cut them off at the root. Second, it is the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. We learn not to suppress them, but to mindfully let them go. Third, it is the effort to cultivate wholesome states, like kindness and concentration, that have not yet arisen. We actively plant and water these positive seeds. And fourth, it is the effort to maintain and develop the wholesome states that are already present. This is the work of a diligent gardener, constantly tending the beautiful garden of the mind. The last two factors, right mindfulness and right concentration, are the pinnacles of this mental training. Right mindfulness is the capacity to maintain a bare, non-judgmental awareness of what is happening in the present moment, both within us and around us. It is the quality of being truly present for our lives, rather than being lost in the endless stream of thoughts about the past and future. Right concentration is the result of this sustained mindfulness and effort. It is the ability to unify the mind, to gather all its scattered energies and hold it steady on a single point, leading to profound states of calm, joy, and penetrating insight. A mind endowed with concentration is like a finely honed laser, capable of cutting through the deepest layers of illusion and revealing the truth of reality for itself. This entire path, comprehensive as it is ultimately a practical tool. The Buddha once told a parable of a man who needed to cross a dangerous river. Seeing no bridge or ferry, he gathered grass, twigs, and branches and skillfully bound them together to build a simple raft. Holding onto the raft, he paddled safely to the other shore. The other shore represents nirvana, the end of suffering. The Buddha then asked his monks, what should the man do with the raft? Should he, out of gratitude, hoist it upon his shoulders and carry it with him on his journey? The monks replied, No, Lord. Correct, the Buddha said. The wise man would leave the raft at the water's edge and continue his journey unburdened. The lesson is clear. The Noble Eightfold Path is this raft. Its sole purpose is to carry us across the river of suffering. It is a pragmatic set of tools, not a rigid dogma to be worshipped or clung to. Its ultimate purpose is to lead us to a freedom so complete that we can even let go of the path itself. And to begin to walk this path, to even start gathering the materials for our raft, we must first learn to work with the restless, distracted, and wild nature of our own minds. We must turn our attention to the constant chatter within, the voice often called the monkey mind. To walk the Eightfold Path, to put its profound wisdom into practice in our daily encounters, we must first become intimately familiar with the territory we are trying to navigate. That territory is the landscape of our own mind. For most of us, for most of our lives, this inner landscape is not a peaceful, well-tended garden. It is a wild, overgrown, and chaotic jungle, and swinging frantically through its branches is a creature the Buddhist masters have long called the monkey mind. Imagine a monkey, restless by its very nature. Then imagine this monkey is drunk, and to make matters worse, this drunken monkey has just been bitten by a scorpion. This vivid, almost comical image is a deeply accurate description of our untrained consciousness. It is a mind that cannot stay still, that leaps impulsively from one thought branch to the next without rest. One moment it is reliving a past argument, replaying every word with fresh bitterness. The next, it swings into the future, anxiously rehearsing a conversation that hasn't happened yet. It chatters endlessly, a constant internal narrator judging, commenting, and criticizing everything it sees. This internal chaos is the direct source of our reactive and unskillful behavior, especially in our relationships. Your partner says something in a slightly ambiguous tone of voice. Instantly, the monkey mind leaps into action. What did they mean by that? It sounded hostile. They must be angry with me. This is just like that time last year when they said something similar. I should have stood up for myself then, and I need to stand up for myself now. I'll show them they can't talk to me like that. All of this happens in a flash, a storm of internal chatter that propels us into a defensive or aggressive reaction before we have even had a moment of clarity. We are not responding to the person in front of us. We are responding to the frantic, paranoid chatter of the monkey in our own head. Here we come to the great and tragic case of mistaken identity that lies at the heart of our suffering. We believe that we are this monkey. We are so fused with the stream of our thoughts that we cannot see any separation. If an angry thought appears, we say, "I am angry." If an anxious thought arises, we conclude, "I am an anxious person." We mistake the chattering voice of the monkey for our true self. But the path of liberation begins with a revolutionary insight. You are not the monkey. You are not the incessant stream of thoughts. You are the space in which the thoughts arise and pass away. A powerful analogy for this is the sky and the clouds. You are not the clouds. You are the sky. Your thoughts, your emotions, your sensations, these are like the clouds, constantly moving, changing form, gathering, and dissolving. Sometimes the sky of your mind is filled with dark, turbulent storm clouds of anger, grief, or fear. At other times, it is clear, brilliant, and blue, with moments of peace and joy. But through it all, the sky itself, your fundamental nature of pure awareness, remains unstained, unharmed, and ever-present. The clouds cannot damage the sky. Realizing this, even for a moment, is the first taste of true freedom. It is the beginning of disidentifying with the chaotic monkey and learning to rest in the vast, open nature of the sky. The primary tool for cultivating this realization is the practice of meditation. And just as with the concepts of karma and nirvana, we must first clear away some common misconceptions. Meditation is not a battle to stop your thoughts. To try and force the mind into silence is like trying to flatten the waves of the ocean with a hot iron. The very effort creates more sizzle, more turbulence. The goal is not to declare war on the monkey mind and kill it. This approach only creates more inner conflict. The goal is to fundamentally change your relationship with your thoughts. Meditation is the practice of becoming a calm and impartial witness to the activity of your own mind. It is to shift from being the actor lost in the drama of your thoughts to being the audience, watching the play unfold with a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity. A classic Buddhist parable beautifully illustrates this process of taming. Imagine a person captures a wild monkey from the forest. This monkey has never known restraint. It is agitated, constantly screeching, jumping, and trying to get away. This represents our untrained mind, wild with its habits of distraction and reactivity. A wise teacher then advises the person to take a strong rope and tie the monkey to a sturdy post driven deep into the ground. The post represents our chosen object of meditation. Most commonly, the physical sensation of the breath as it enters and leaves the body. The rope is the faculty of mindfulness. At first, when the monkey finds itself tethered, its agitation intensifies. It leaps and pulls frantically at the rope, running to the very end of its tether until it chokes, falls back, and then jumps up to struggle all over again. This is exactly what it feels like when we first sit down to meditate. We suddenly become aware of just how chaotic our mind truly is. Thoughts seem to come faster than ever. The urge to get up is overwhelming. We feel like we are failing because our mind is so busy. But this is a necessary part of the process. The monkey struggles for a long time, but eventually, it begins to realize that its efforts are futile. The post is unmoving. The rope is strong. It cannot escape. It simply grows tired. And finally, it surrenders the struggle. It lies down at the foot of the post, still watchful, but at rest. Our mind, after we consistently and gently bring it back to the breath again and again, also begins to settle. It realizes it cannot win the battle of distraction. It gives up the fight and begins to quiet down, resting in the presence of the breath. Now, the monkey is tamed. It is no longer a wild enemy, but a powerful ally. A tamed mind is an instrument of incredible power, clarity, and peace. The practical, life-altering result of this taming process is the creation of what we can call a sacred gap. In our ordinary, reactive life, there is no space between a stimulus and our response. A stimulus, a cursor, critical word, a stressful event, and it is followed instantaneously by our conditioned, habitual reaction. But with the practice of mindfulness, a space begins to open up, a pause. The stimulus occurs, your partner uses a sharp tone of voice, and in that moment, before the habitual retort springs to your lips, the gap opens. Awareness arises within this space. You notice, there is the sound of a sharp tone. You notice, I feel a flash of heat rising in my chest, a tightening in my jaw. This is the feeling of anger. You are no longer the anger itself. You are the awareness that is witnessing the anger. And within this sacred gap, within this pause, lies the entirety of your freedom. In this space, you have a choice. You can choose to follow the old, conditioned path of lashing out and creating more suffering, or you can choose a new path. You can take a breath. You can access the wisdom of right intention and choose to respond with kindness, or at least with non-reactivity. This gap is the birthplace of wisdom. It is where we stop being puppets of our past conditioning and become conscious creators of our present reality. It is where we stop mindlessly planting the thorny seeds of negative karma. Every time we notice the impulse to react and instead choose to pause, we are weakening the old habit and strengthening our capacity for freedom. We are moving from being a mere reactor in the world to being a conscious responder. This is how we begin to bring the entire eightfold path into our moment-to-moment experience, right in the heat of a difficult encounter. The space allows right view to arise, right intention to be set, and right speech to be chosen. Therefore, the taming of the monkey mind is not an esoteric practice for monks in a cave. It is the most practical skill we can develop for navigating the complexities of human relationships and the pressures of modern life. It is the process of befriending ourselves, of learning to hold our own inner chaos with a steady and compassionate attention. As the water of the mind, once so turbulent, begins to settle, it becomes clear, and in this new clarity, we can begin to see what was previously obscured by the constant agitation. We can begin to investigate the most subtle and powerful structure that the mind creates, the very architect of our loneliness and conflict. We can now turn our steady, tamed attention to examine the elusive sense of me, the ego. Having brought a measure of calm to the restless monkey mind, we can now use our steadier attention to investigate the single greatest source of our suffering in our encounters with others. It is the architect of our loneliness, the commander of our defenses, and the tireless promoter of conflict. It is the entity we spend our entire lives protecting, promoting, and defending. It is our sense of self, our ego. We experience it as the solid, continuous center of our universe. It is the I in every thought, the protagonist in the movie of our life. It feels more real than anything else. And yet, the Buddha's most radical and liberating teaching, the doctrine of anatta, or not self, is a direct challenge to this fundamental assumption. It states that this solid, separate, enduring self that we cherish so deeply is, in fact, an illusion. There is no permanent, independent I to be found anywhere. This is not to say that we do not exist. It is to say that we do not exist in the way we think we do. So if there is no solid self, then what are we? What is this experience of being me? The Buddhist analysis explains that what we call a self is not a static entity, but a dynamic, flowing process. It is a temporary bundling together of 5 distinct components, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. To look into these aggregates is to deconstruct the machine of the self and see that there is no ghost inside. The first aggregate is form. This is our physical body, with all its parts and senses. We deeply identify with this form. We say, I am tall, I am sick, I am beautiful, believing the body is a solid expression of who we are. In our relationships, we are drawn to or repelled by the physical form of others. But this body is just a collection of impermanent elements, constantly changing, decaying, and destined to dissolve. It is not a self, it is a process. The second aggregate is feeling. Whenever our senses make contact with the world, a raw feeling tone immediately arises. It can be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. We are a constant stream of these feelings. A kind word from a partner produces a pleasant feeling. A traffic jam produces an unpleasant feeling. The feeling of the chair beneath you might be neutral. We desperately cling to the pleasant feelings and violently push away the unpleasant ones, believing, I am happy, or I am miserable. We mistake these fleeting, reactive tones for our core identity, forgetting they are as ephemeral as the weather. The third aggregate is perception. This is the faculty that takes the raw data from our senses and gives it a label. It recognizes and conceptualizes. Perception sees a particular shape and a sound and labels it. My partner. It hears a certain tone of voice and labels it anger. It sees a situation and labels it a threat or an opportunity. Our perceptions are not pure. They are deeply colored by our past experiences, our biases, and our cultural conditioning. We don't see the world as it is. We see our perception of it, a mental construct that we then mistake for objective reality. The fourth aggregate is mental formations. This is a vast and complex category that includes all of our habits, opinions, beliefs, moods, and, most importantly, our volitional urges, the force of karma. This is the chattering of the monkey mind, the voice of our prejudices, our ambitions, our fears, and our desires. We identify with these formations more than anything else. We say, I am a Democrat. I am an optimist. I am the kind of person who likes modern art. Our relationships are often built upon shared mental formations and descend into conflict when they clash. We go to war, both literally and figuratively, to defend these mental constructs, believing that our opinions are us. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness. This is the fundamental faculty of knowing or awareness that allows the other four aggregates to be experienced. When your eye meets a shape, eye consciousness arises. When your ear meets a sound, ear consciousness arises. It is the light that illuminates the experience. But crucially, it is not a singular, continuous soul that resides in the body. It is a flickering awareness that arises dependently, moment by moment, with each new experience. There is seeing, hearing, and thinking, but there is no permanent, unchanging thinker behind it all. What we call the self, then, is simply the name we give to the dynamic, flowing interplay of these five impermanent processes. Because this bundled self has no core, no solid center, it is haunted by a deep, abiding sense of insecurity. Like a phantom, it knows on some level that it is not real, and so it spends all of its energy trying to prove its own existence. Its primary function becomes self-preservation and self-enhancement. This is the root of the ego's endless defensive strategies and the source of most human conflict. Think of the language we use when our feelings are hurt. He embarrassed me. She showed me no respect. My boss doesn't appreciate me. In each case, it is the ego that feels threatened. It is the ego's public image, its need for validation, its sense of importance that has been challenged. A conflict of opinions is not just a disagreement about ideas. It is a life or death battle for the ego, which believes that if its opinion is wrong, then I am wrong, and therefore my very existence is diminished. We are protecting a ghost, and we suffer immensely in the process. A classic Zen story illustrates this perfectly. A man was enjoying a peaceful afternoon, resting in his small boat as it drifted on a calm, misty lake. With his eyes closed, he was meditating, feeling at one with the tranquility of the scene. Suddenly, he felt a sharp jolt. Another boat had bumped into his. His eyes flew open, and a surge of anger coursed through him. Who is the idiot who isn't watching where they're going? He thought. His mind was instantly filled with blame and righteous indignation. He was ready to stand up and shout at the careless person who had so rudely shattered his peace. He turned to face the other boat and deliver his tirade, but he stopped short. The boat was empty. It had simply broken loose from its moorings and the current had carried it into him. In that instant, all of his anger vanished completely. It evaporated into the mist. He couldn't be angry at an empty boat. The event itself was identical. His boat was struck, but the target for his anger, the other, the offending ego he had constructed in his mind, was gone. And without a target, his own egoic reaction of anger had no ground to stand on and simply collapsed. This story asks us a profound question. When another person bumps into us with a harsh word, a careless action, or a differing opinion, are we not reacting as if we were hit by a person, when in fact we were only hit by an empty boat? That person is a collection of the 5 aggregates, drifting according to the unseen currents of their own karma, their own habits, their own conditioning. Their action is an event, an impersonal unfolding of causes. But our ego immediately assumes a malicious, personal intenter, someone in the boat who is intentionally targeting us. Understanding the truth of not self is to begin to see that all boats are, in a fundamental sense, empty. This insight is the key to taking things less personally. It allows us to hold our own identity more lightly and to see others not as solid adversaries or allies, but as fellow processes, unfolding just as we are. To see through the illusion of the self is the beginning of profound freedom. It is the understanding that when someone praises you, they are praising a fleeting collection of aggregates. When someone insults you, they are insulting a fleeting collection of aggregates. It is not necessary to become inflated by the one or crushed by the other. However, knowing this intellectually is one thing. Dealing with the powerful, visceral emotions that the ego generates is another. The man in the story felt real anger, a fiery, potent force. This reaction of aversion is one of the ego's most powerful and destructive weapons. To continue on our path, it is not enough to simply see that the other boat is empty. We must also learn what to do with the fire that ignites within us. Before we have a chance to see clearly, we must turn our attention directly to this poison of anger, to understand its nature and discover the specific antidotes that can transform its destructive heat into the warmth of wisdom. Of all the poisons that arise from the insecure ego, none is more fiery, more destructive, and more immediately damaging to our relationships than anger. In the Buddhist teachings, anger, in all its forms from mild irritation and resentment to explosive rage, known as dosa, one of the 3 root poisons that keep us bound to the wheel of suffering. It is a fire that, once ignited, consumes our inner peace, floods our bodies with stressful chemicals, and clouds our mind with delusion, compelling us to speak and act in ways that we almost always regret. There is an ancient saying that captures its essence perfectly. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Before the heat of your anger ever reaches the person you believe has wronged you, it has already seared your own heart and mind. To begin the work of transforming this powerful energy, we must first unmask its true cause. Our instinctive belief is that other people and external events make us angry. He made me furious. This traffic is making me lose my mind. We project the cause outward, casting ourselves in the role of the passive victim of an external provocation. But as we have seen, this is a profound misunderstanding. The external event is merely the spark. The vast, dry forest, ready to burst into flame, is our own inner conditioning, the collected demands and insecurities of the ego. Anger is the ego's violent tantrum when reality does not conform to its desires. It is the raw, frustrated energy that erupts when we don't get what we want or when we are forced to experience what we don't want. The feeling of being disrespected, ignored, or wronged is the battle cry of the self that believes it is solid and important. When we see this clearly, the entire project of transforming anger shifts. It ceases to be about trying to control other people and becomes the inner work of investigating our own attachments and expectations. The path of transformation offers two powerful antidotes, two ways of working with the hot coal of anger so that we don't have to get burned. The first is the immediate emergency practice of mindful observation. This is the skill we apply in the very moment that anger arises. It is not about suppression, gritting our teeth and forcing the anger down where it will fester and turn into resentment. Nor is it about mindless expression, venting our rage and causing more harm. It is about a third way to meet the raw energy of the anger with a steady, non-judgmental awareness. The moment you feel that first flash of irritation, the first tightening in your stomach, your practice is to recognize it. You can mentally whisper to yourself, "Anger is here." In doing so, you are not saying, "I am angry." You are objectifying the emotion, acknowledging it as a temporary visitor in the house of your mind, rather than identifying with it as the owner of the house. Immediately after recognition, you bring your full attention into your body. Where do you feel the anger physically? Leave the story of why you are angry for a moment and investigate the what. Notice the heat flushing your face. Notice the clenching in your jaw, the tightening of your shoulders. Feel the rapid, shallow breaths and the pounding of your heart. Stay with these raw physical sensations. The pure energy of an emotion, when not fueled by thought, has a very short lifespan, perhaps only 90 seconds. It is our mental stories, our replaying of the offense, our justification of our righteousness, that keeps the fire blazing for hours, days, or even years. By anchoring your awareness in the physical sensations, you are refusing to add more fuel to the fire. You can breathe into the areas of tension, not to force them away, but to hold them in a spacious and compassionate awareness. This practice creates the sacred gap between the stimulus and your response, preventing the anger from immediately hijacking your mouth and your actions. Once the initial intensity of the emotional fire has been met with mindfulness and has begun to subside, we can apply the second, deeper antidote, the practice of reflective contemplation. This is the work of wisdom, of looking deeply into the nature of the person who has triggered us. This is not to be done in the heat of the moment, but later, when the mind is calmer, you can bring the person to mind and ask a series of questions with genuine curiosity. This person who spoke to me so harshly, are they a truly happy and contented person? The answer is almost always no. Happy, peaceful people do not go around spreading misery. Their actions are not a display of their strength, but a leaking out of their own inner suffering. You can then reflect further. What might be the causes and conditions that led them to this point? What fears, what insecurities, what past traumas might they be carrying? You see that their mind, just like yours, is a chaotic jungle ruled by a monkey, that their sense of self is just as fragile and defensive as your own. Their harmful action, you begin to realize, is simply the fruit of their own ignorance, their own craving, their own dukkha. Their boat is just as empty as yours, adrift on the currents of their own conditioning. This reflection does not excuse their behavior or mean you should tolerate abuse. What it does is dissolve the personal, venomous nature of the anger. The person transforms in your mind from a malicious, calculating villain into a suffering being, trapped in their own patterns. The emotion in your heart begins to shift from hot, personal animosity to a cooler, more spacious sense of compassion. There is a timeless story from the life of the Buddha that perfectly embodies this entire practice. A man of the Brahmin caste, a well-respected religious scholar, grew intensely jealous of the Buddha's popularity and the devotion of his followers. Determined to discredit him, the Brahmin marched to the grove where the Buddha was teaching and, in front of everyone, began to shout at him, unleashing a torrent of the most vile and hateful curses imaginable. The Buddha did not flinch. He did not argue or defend himself. He simply sat in perfect stillness, listening with a calm, unwavering, and compassionate attention, until the man, breathless and exhausted from his own rage, finally fell silent. After a long pause, the Buddha spoke, his voice gentle and clear. "Venerable Sir," he asked, "do you, from time to time, receive guests in your home?" The Brahmin, confused by the question, curtly replied that he did. "And when they visit," the Buddha continued, "do you offer them food and drink?" "Of course," the man snapped. "Well," the Buddha said, his eyes filled with a soft light, "if you offer a gift to your guest, but the guest politely declines to accept it, to whom then does the gift belong?" The Brahmin thought for a moment and replied, "In that case, it would still belong to me." The Buddha nodded gently. "Likewise, Venerable Sir," he said, "today you have come and offered me a gift of your anger, your insults, and your curses. I decline to accept your gift." The Brahmin was stunned into silence. He saw his own anger, his own poison, reflected back at him, a gift he now had to keep for himself. In that moment of profound insight, he understood the self-inflicted nature of his own hatred. This story teaches us that we have a choice. When others direct their anger towards us, we are not obligated to accept it. We do not have to let their hot coal become our own. Through mindfulness, we can notice the gift being offered. Through wisdom, we can understand the suffering of the person offering it. And with compassion, we can politely decline to accept it, leaving the anger with its original owner. This practice of transforming the poison of anger is a profound act of self-love and a cornerstone of building peaceful relationships. To move beyond simply neutralizing the negative, we must also learn to actively cultivate the positive. We must learn to tend the garden of the heart by planting the seeds of the direct antidote to anger, the boundless warmth of loving kindness. Having learned to disarm the explosive power of anger, we now turn to the practice of actively cultivating its direct opposite. This is not a passive state of non-anger, but a positive, creative, and boundless quality of the heart. In the landscape of human emotion, we use the word love to describe everything from our favorite ice cream to the deepest bonds of family. But so much of what we call love is transactional, conditional, and rooted in the ego's needs. It is a love that says, "I love you because you make me feel good. I love you because you are mine." The Buddhist path invites us to cultivate a radically different kind of love, a love that is unconditional, unselfish, and as vast as the sky itself. This quality is known as Metta. The Pali word Metta is often translated as loving kindness, friendliness, or boundless goodwill. It is not an emotion we fall into by chance. It is a skill we develop through conscious, dedicated practice. It is the sincere, heartfelt wish for the well-being and happiness of all beings, without exception and without demanding anything in return. If attachment-based love is like a narrow spotlight, shining only on the few people who please us, while leaving everyone else in darkness, Metta is like the sun. The sun does not choose upon whom it shines its warmth. It radiates its light equally in all directions, upon the saint and the sinner, the friend and the enemy, the beautiful flower and the jagged rock. It does not ask for anything in return for its life-giving energy. Metta is the practice of becoming like the sun, It is the direct and powerful antidote to the poison of anger and aversion. While anger is a force of contraction that closes the heart into a tight, defensive fist, metta is a force of infinite expansion. It dissolves the illusion of a separate self, breaking down the walls between me and them, and revealing the shared, fundamental desire for happiness that unites all living things. This boundless quality of the heart is not something we simply hope for. It is something we actively train, much like an athlete trains their body. The primary method for this is the practice of metta meditation, a systematic cultivation that gently expands our capacity for love in progressive stages. The first and often most difficult stage is to direct loving kindness towards ourselves. In a culture that often mistakes self-compassion for selfishness, this can feel awkward or even indulgent. But as the teaching wisely points out, you cannot offer water to others from a dry well. If our own heart is filled with self-criticism and negativity, any love we try to offer others will be contaminated. And so, the practice begins here, in the quiet of our own being. We gently repeat a series of traditional phrases, allowing the intention behind them to sink in. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease. We are not affirming that we are these things, but planting the sincere wish, the gentle intention, for our own fundamental well-being. Once we have established a foundation of warmth for ourselves, we move to the second stage, a beloved friend. We bring to mind a person for whom we feel easy, uncomplicated affection, a dear friend, a respected mentor, perhaps a cherished pet. We hold their image in our heart and extend the same wishes to them. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. We allow the natural feeling of warmth and friendliness to arise, to fill our awareness. The third stage begins the work of expansion. We bring to mind a neutral person, someone we see regularly, but have no strong feelings about one way or the other. The cashier at the store, the mail carrier, a colleague in another department. We now extend the exact same wishes of metta to this person. This stage is powerful because it begins to break down the walls of indifference that we build around our hearts. We start to see the person behind the role, to recognize their shared humanity and their own quiet wish to be happy. The world begins to feel less like a collection of strangers and more like a community of individuals. The fourth stage is the most transformative and the most challenging. We bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict, someone who has hurt us. This is not an exercise in condoning their harmful actions or forcing a superficial reconciliation. It is a profound act of reclaiming our own inner freedom. With as much sincerity as we can muster, we hold them in our awareness and offer them the same phrases. May you be happy. May you be healthy. We may not feel a sudden rush of warmth, and that is perfectly fine. The practice is about the sincerity of the intention. In offering this wish, we are choosing to release ourselves from the prison of our own resentment, from the corrosive poison of holding a grudge. We are recognizing that their actions, like all actions, arise from their own suffering and ignorance. In wishing for their happiness, we are implicitly wishing for them to be free from the very suffering that causes them to harm others. Finally, in the fifth stage, we expand our heart to its full, boundless capacity. We radiate the light of metta in all directions, to all beings without distinction. We extend it to our family, our friends, our neighbors, our community, our country. We extend it to all people across the world, to all animals, to all creatures in the air, on the land, and in the seas. We extend it to all beings, seen and unseen, in all realms of existence. We hold the entire world in our heart and suffuse it with the simple, powerful wish, may all beings everywhere be happy. This formal practice transforms not just our time on the meditation cushion, but the very fabric of our daily encounters. When you are faced with a difficult person at work or a frustrating situation in traffic, a new possibility arises. Instead of the instantaneous reaction of anger and judgment, you have a new tool. You can, silently within your own heart, offer a single phrase of metta. As the other person is speaking, as the frustration is rising, you can quietly wish, may you be happy. This simple, internal act is revolutionary. It completely changes the energetic dynamic of the encounter. It pours cool water on the hot coal of your own reactivity. You are no longer meeting their aggression with more aggression, their darkness with more darkness. You are meeting it with an invisible shield of goodwill, a quiet strength that protects your own peace above all else. There is a powerful story that illustrates how metta can serve as our greatest protection. A group of monks were instructed by the Buddha to go into a deep and wild forest to practice meditation. As they settled into their solitary places, under ancient trees, they became overwhelmed with fear. They heard strange noises in the dark, imagined the presence of wild animals, and felt that the spirits of the forest were hostile to them, trying to drive them out. Their minds, filled with fear, which is a form of aversion, were too agitated to find any peace. They fled the forest and returned to the Buddha, explaining their terror. The Buddha did not offer them a protective charm, a new mantra, or a safer location. He gave them a spiritual weapon. He taught them the discourse on loving kindness and told them to return to the very same forest and to practice radiating metta constantly. The monks did as he instructed. They returned to their spots under the great trees, and instead of fear, they began to fill the forest with boundless goodwill. They radiated wishes for happiness and safety to every being, from the smallest insect crawling on a leaf to the unseen spirits dwelling in the trees. As the energy of their own hearts changed from fear to love, the energy of the forest around them seemed to change as well. The atmosphere became calm and supportive. It is said that the spirits, so moved by the purity of the monks' metta, became their fierce protectors. The lesson is profound. The monks' greatest shield was not an outer wall, but the radiant power of their own open hearts. Metta pacifies the world around us by first pacifying the aversion and fear within us. Thus, the practice of metta is the practice of becoming a refuge for ourselves and for the world. It is the solvent of loneliness and the foundation of all genuine connection. But as we cultivate this sincere wish for all beings to be happy, we inevitably become more sensitive to a profound truth, that so many beings are not happy, they are suffering. Our heartfelt wish for their well-being naturally and beautifully evolves into a new, tender quality of the hata, deep and active yearning for them to be free from their pain. This trembling of the heart in the face of suffering is the birth of the next stage of our journey, the awakening of compassion. As the radiant sun of loving kindness, or metta, begins to rise in the landscape of the heart, its light inevitably illuminates the dark valleys and hidden corners of the world. In sincerely wishing for all beings to be happy, we cannot help but become acutely aware of a profound and sobering truth. So many beings are not happy. We open our eyes and see a world saturated with pain, from the quiet desperation of a lonely neighbor to the vast collective suffering of war, famine, and injustice. We see the anxiety in the faces of our colleagues, the frustration of drivers in traffic, the sorrow of a friend going through a loss, the boundless wish for happiness, when it encounters the reality of suffering, naturally transforms into a new, and even more tender quality of the heart. This is the birth of compassion, or karuna. If metta is the wish, may you be happy, karuna is the trembling of the heart that whispers, may you be free from your suffering. It is not a passive sadness, but an active, engaged, and courageous response to the pain of the world. It is the heart's refusal to shut down or turn away in the face of dukkha. It is here that we must draw a crucial distinction between true compassion and its distant, counterfeit cousin, pity. Pity is an emotion of the ego, an act of separation. When we feel pity for someone, we look down from our own perceived position of strength or stability. Pity says, "Oh, you poor thing, how terrible your situation is. I am so glad I am not you." It creates a hierarchy, reinforcing the boundary between the self, who is okay, and the other, who is suffering. Pity is standing on a dry and solid riverbank, looking down at a person struggling in the current, and feeling a sense of detached sorrow for their unfortunate predicament. It maintains a safe distance. Karuna, true compassion, is born not of separation, but of a deep wisdom of interconnectedness. It arises from the recognition that we are all in the same river. It looks across at the struggling person, not with condescension, but with a profound sense of shared vulnerability. It says, "I see your suffering, and I recognize it. The seeds of that very same fear, that very same grief, that very same confusion exist within my own heart. Your struggle is my struggle." Compassion understands that the boundary between self and other is ultimately an illusion. It is the visceral understanding of Indra's net, the knowledge that to witness the suffering of one jewel is to feel the entire web tremble. It is the courage to step off the riverbank and into the water of shared human experience, not to drown with the other, but to offer a hand from a place of genuine empathy and shared being. This brave and open-hearted quality is tested most profoundly when we are called to direct it towards those who have caused us pain, towards the person we have labeled the enemy. Our every instinct, sharpened by millions of years of evolution and reinforced by the ego's defensive programming, screams at us to meet aggression with aggression, to answer harm with hatred. The idea of feeling compassion for an enemy can seem not only impossible, but absurd, a form of spiritual weakness or a betrayal of our own pain. But the path of liberation shows us that holding on to hatred for our enemy is the very act that keeps us imprisoned, chained to the person who hurt us, forced to carry their memory like a heavy, toxic burden. Compassion is the key that unlocks our own chains. The practice begins not by denying our pain, but by holding it with honesty. We acknowledge the harm that was done. We do not pretend it didn't hurt. Spiritual practice is not about becoming an unfeeling doormat. It is about metabolizing pain into wisdom, not suppressing it. Once we have honored our own experience, the work of compassion begins by looking deeper into the so-called enemy. We use our contemplative insight to look past their actions and into the heart of their own inner world. We ask the difficult questions. What must it be like to be that person? What deep well of fear, insecurity, or unhealed trauma would cause a person to speak or act with such poison? What agony must they carry within their own heart that it spills out and harms others? We begin to see with the eyes of a physician looking at a patient. The cruel words, the betrayals, the aggressive actions, these are not signs of their strength or evil. They are the symptoms of their disease. They are the outward manifestations of their own inner torment, their own untamed monkey mind, their own enslavement to the poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. Happy, whole, and peaceful people do not inflict suffering. They radiate peace. Therefore, any act of harm is, by its very nature, a cry of pain. As we hold this perspective, the hard shell of our anger begins to soften. We start to see that the person who hurt us is not a monster, but a deeply suffering human being, trapped in the same web of cause and effect as we are. We recognize that the seeds of the very same poisons that drive the anger, jealousy, fear also lie dormant within our own consciousness. Perhaps our conditions in this life have been fortunate enough that those seeds have not sprouted into such destructive actions, but we cannot deny their presence. This recognition of our shared human fallibility is the bridge of empathy. Their suffering is no longer alien. It is a more extreme and tragic manifestation of a potential that lives within us all. And from this place of profound connection, the wish of karuna can finally, genuinely arise. It is the simple, powerful wish for them to be healed. May you be free from your suffering. May you be free from the anger that consumes you. May you be free from the fear that drives you to cause harm. This is not a wish for them to get away with it. It is the ultimate wish for the cycle of harm to end at its source, in the heart of the person causing it. No story from the Buddha's life illustrates this principle of active compassion more dramatically than his encounter with his own arch-enemy, his cousin, Devadatta. Consumed by a venomous jealousy of the Buddha's spiritual radiance and influence, Devadatta dedicated his life to destroying him. He slandered him. He tried to create a schism in the monastic community. He even attempted to assassinate him by rolling a boulder down a mountain, which only grazed the Buddha's foot. His hatred was relentless. His final and most dramatic attempt involved a fierce, wild elephant named Nalagiri, known for its savage temper. Devadatta and his conspirators arranged for the elephant to be fed copious amounts of intoxicating liquor, enraging it into a terrifying, uncontrollable fury. As the Buddha and his monks were walking calmly on their morning alms round in the city, Devadatta had the elephant released, pointed directly towards the Buddha. A wave of panic swept through the streets. People screamed and fled in terror. Shopkeepers slammed their shutters, and the city descended into chaos. The Buddha's own monks, including his loyal attendant Ananda, were terrified and urged him to run or use his powers to protect himself. But the Buddha remained perfectly still, his composure unshakable. He looked at the charging, trumpeting beast, not as a monster to be feared or a threat to be vanquished, but as a suffering being. He saw its confusion, its pain, the agony of being poisoned and goaded into a rage against its will. He did not feel an ounce of fear or anger. Instead, his heart was flooded with an immense and powerful compassion, a boundless karuna for the torment of the elephant itself. He stood his ground and radiated this powerful, gentle energy directly towards the charging animal. What happened next became legend. As the enraged elephant entered the palpable field of the Buddha's loving kindness and compassion, its fury began to dissolve. Its thundering charge slowed to a trot, then to a walk. The fire in its eyes softened. The sounds of its rage quieted. It came to a stop just before the Buddha, lowered its great head, and knelt before him as if in reverence. The Buddha reached out and gently stroked the elephant's forehead, calming it completely. The crowd watched in stunned silence. The Buddha had not used a weapon or a supernatural power. He had met raw, violent hatred, not with opposing force, but with the invincible softness of pure compassion. He had not fought the monster, he had healed it. And in that moment, it was understood that his compassion was not just for the elephant, but for his cousin Devadatta as well. Seeing him as the one most deeply tormented by the poison of his own making. This is the power of karuna. It is a spiritual alchemy that transforms the lead of hatred into the gold of wisdom. In our own lives, every time we choose to respond to an attack, not with counterattack, but with an attempt to understand the suffering behind it, we are breaking the ancient karmic cycle of violence. The old law of an eye for an eye ensures only that the whole world goes blind. Retaliation only adds more fuel to the fire, guaranteeing that the cycle of harm will continue into the next generation, the next relationship, the next encounter. Compassion is the only force in the universe powerful enough to absorb hatred without becoming contaminated by it. It is the cool water that extinguishes the hot coal of anger, not just for us, but for everyone. It is the ultimate act of peace, one that begins in the quiet, courageous sanctuary of our own transformed heart. And as we learn to hold the present suffering of others with this compassionate gaze, we are naturally led to address the wounds of the past that we still carry within us. We must learn how to release the burden of hurts we have already received, which brings us to the essential and liberating practice of forgiveness. As we cultivate a heart of compassion, learning to see the suffering that motivates even those who harm us, we arrive at a formidable gateway on our path to inner peace. This is the gateway of forgiveness. For many, this word carries a heavy weight. It can feel like a demand to betray our own pain, to say that what happened was acceptable, or to let someone who hurt us get away with their actions without consequence. We resist it, believing that our anger is a shield, that our resentment is a form of justice, and that holding a grudge is the only way to honor the wound we have received. But the wisdom of the path reveals a startling truth. The refusal to forgive is a prison, and we are our own jailer. Holding on to resentment is like drinking a cup of poison and waiting for the other person to die. The bitterness corrodes not their life, but our own, eating away at our peace, moment by moment, day after day. True forgiveness is not an act of weakness. It is an act of profound strength and radical self-care. It is the decision to stop allowing the events of the past to continue poisoning the present. When we refuse to forgive, we chain ourselves to the person who hurt us. We grant them the power to live inside our minds, rent-free, where they can injure us again and again with our own memories. We are forced to carry them on our back, a heavy burden that slows our journey and drains our vitality. Forgiveness is not about opening their cell door. It is about opening our own. It is the ultimate declaration that we will no longer be a victim of the past, that we are choosing freedom over the grim satisfaction of being right. To embark on this liberating practice, it helps to understand its components, to see it not as a single, overwhelming demand, but as a process with distinct, achievable steps. The first step is to fully and honestly acknowledge the pain. True forgiveness never involves denial or spiritual bypassing. It does not mean pretending we weren't hurt. On the contrary, we must have the courage to look directly at the wound and say, yes, this happened. This was wrong. This caused me real and significant pain. We must honor our own experience and allow ourselves to feel the grief, the anger, and the sense of injustice. Without this honest validation of our own suffering, any attempt at forgiveness will feel hollow and inauthentic, a form of self-betrayal rather than self-liberation. The second step is to cultivate a compassionate understanding of the person who caused the harm. This is where the practice of karuna becomes essential. Having honored our own pain, we make a conscious effort to look beyond the action and see the suffering being who performed it. We remember the parable of the empty boat. We reflect on the causes and conditions that must have been present in their life to lead them to such an unskillful and harmful action. We see that their cruelty was not a sign of their power, but a symptom of their own inner poverty. This does not excuse what they did, but it does depersonalize it. It reframes the story from "a bad person intentionally chose to hurt me" to "a suffering person, lost in their own ignorance and fear, acted out, and I was wounded as a result." This shift in perspective is crucial. It begins to dissolve the hard, personal knot of resentment, replacing it with a more spacious, albeit sorrowful, understanding. The final step is the act of release itself. This is a conscious, internal decision to cancel the debt. When someone has hurt us, we feel they owe us something: an apology, remorse, an admission of guilt, a change in their behavior. We wait for this payment, and as long as we wait, we remain tied to them. But often, this payment never comes. The person may be gone, they may be unaware of the pain they caused, or they may simply be incapable of giving us what we need. Forgiveness is the decision to stop being the debt collector. It is a declaration of emotional bankruptcy on the situation. We realize that the only person being harmed by our demand for payment is ourselves. And so, we choose to cancel the debt, not because the debtor has earned it, but because we no longer wish to carry the heavy ledgers of resentment. We make a choice for our own freedom. We let it go. A classic Zen story beautifully illustrates this process of letting go. Two monks were on a long pilgrimage. They came to a river that was swollen with recent rains, its current swift and strong. On the riverbank stood a beautiful young woman in fine silk robes, clearly distressed. She was afraid to cross for fear of being swept away or ruining her clothes. The two monks had taken strict vows, one of which was to avoid all physical contact with women. The younger monk, rigid in his adherence to the rules, saw the woman's plight, but walked straight past her, across the river, his mind already judging her for her vanity. The older, wiser monk, however, saw her distress. Without a word, he walked up to her, lifted her gracefully onto his shoulders, and carried her through the rushing water to the other side. He set her down gently. She bowed in gratitude, and he continued on his journey. For the rest of the day, the two monks walked in silence, but the mind of the younger monk was a raging storm. He was consumed with judgment and indignation. How could he do that? He seethed internally. He has broken our most sacred vows. He is impure. He has brought disgrace upon our order. For hours, his mind replayed the scene, his inner peace completely shattered by his clinging to the rule and his righteous anger towards his companion. Finally, as evening approached, he could bear it no longer. He burst out, "Brother, I must speak. What you did today was improper. You broke your vows by touching that woman. I cannot stay silent about this." The older monk stopped, looked at his agitated companion with a calm and gentle expression, and replied softly, "Brother, I left that woman by the riverbank hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This simple question reveals the essence of forgiveness. The older monk performed a physical action and immediately let it go. The younger monk performed no action at all, but he was the one who was truly burdened. He was carrying the woman, the event, and his own judgment in his mind, and it was weighing him down with every step. Our resentments are the women we refuse to leave by the river. They are the past events we insist on carrying with us, allowing them to poison our present moment. Forgiveness is the simple, powerful act of putting them down. Ultimately, this practice of letting go must be turned inward. For many of us, the hardest person to forgive is ourselves. We are haunted by the memory of our own mistakes, the times when we were the one in the empty boat, the times we spoke the harsh word, the times we caused pain through our own ignorance and fear. we carry a heavy burden of guilt and shame. The same three-step process applies. We must fully acknowledge the harm we caused, without excuse. We must look with compassion upon the person we were at that time, understanding the conditions that led us to act as we did. And finally, we must offer ourselves the same grace we would offer another. We must cancel our own debt and release ourselves from the prison of self-recrimination. It is often only when we have learned to forgive others that our hearts become soft enough to finally forgive ourselves. Forgiveness, then, is the ultimate act of returning to the present. It is about putting down the heavy bags of the past so that we are free to walk on, unburdened, into the freshness of each new moment, and to inhabit that moment fully. To avoid picking up new burdens, we need a tool of constant, vigilant awareness. We need the practice of mindfulness. Having journeyed through the compassionate and liberating practices of transforming anger and offering forgiveness, we have begun to clear the ground of our inner world. We have learned to work with the painful poisons of the past and to meet the present suffering of others with an open heart. But how do we maintain this open heart? How do we inhabit our lives in a way that prevents new resentments from taking root and new conflicts from blindly erupting? The answer lies in cultivating the single most essential and foundational skill on the entire spiritual path. It is the practice of meeting life, not as a memory or a fantasy, but as it is, in the only moment we ever truly have. This is the practice of mindfulness. To understand mindfulness, it is perhaps easiest to first understand its opposite, the state in which we spend the vast majority of our waking lives. This is the state of autopilot, of being lost in thought, a kind of waking sleep where the body is performing one action while the mind is somewhere else entirely. Consider a typical day. The alarm rings, and before our feet even touch the floor, the mind is already at the office, rehearsing a difficult conversation or worrying about a deadline. We shower, but we don't feel the warm water on our skin. We are instead lost in a mental checklist of the day's tasks. We drive to work, but we arrive with no memory of the journey, having been completely absorbed in an imaginary argument or a wistful daydream. We eat our lunch, but we don't taste the food. Our attention is captivated by the endless scroll of a phone screen. We sit with our partner in the evening, and as they speak, we are not truly listening. We are half hearing their words, while our mind formulates our rebuttal, waits for our turn to speak, or drifts off to a problem at work. This is not living. This is a form of forgetting. The Pali word for this state is pamada, or heedlessness. We are forgetting our own lives as they are unfolding. We are ghosts in our own homes, phantoms in our own relationships. We interact not with the real, living person in front of us, but with a mental projection of them, a character constructed from our memories of their past and our expectations for their future. This profound lack of presence is the fertile ground in which almost all misunderstanding, disconnection, and conflict grows. How can we possibly connect with another when we are not even connected with ourselves? Mindfulness, or sati, is the antidote to this great forgetting. It is the gentle, persistent, and radical act of remembering. It is the energy of remembering to come back home to the present moment, again and again. Mindfulness is often defined as paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let us unpack that. Paying attention on purpose means it is an intentional act. We consciously choose to direct our awareness, to wrangle the wandering monkey mind, and bring it back from the past or the future. In the present moment is the destination. It is the only place where life is actually happening. Non-judgmentally is the crucial quality of that attention. We are not trying to fix, change, or evaluate what we find in the present moment. We are simply allowing it to be as it is, holding it in a spacious and accepting awareness. It is the difference between criticizing a rainstorm and simply feeling the sensation of the rain on your skin. The Buddha provided a comprehensive map for this homecoming, known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. These are 4 primary domains of experience where we can anchor our awareness at any time. The first foundation is mindfulness of the body. This is the most tangible and accessible anchor we have. We can bring our awareness to the physical sensations of the breath entering and leaving the nostrils. We can feel the rise and fall of the abdomen. We can notice the feeling of our feet on the ground as we walk, or the sensation of warmth from a cup of tea in our hands. The body is always in the present moment. By grounding our attention there, we pull the mind out of the chaos of thought and into the reality of our lived physical experience. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings. This is the practice of observing the constant stream of feeling tones that arise and pass away with every moment of contact. We learn to notice pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings as they occur, without clinging to the pleasant or pushing away the unpleasant. We see a friend and notice a pleasant feeling arise. We receive a critical email and notice an unpleasant feeling arise. We sit in a quiet room and notice a neutral feeling. By simply observing them as impersonal, fleeting events, we stop being their slave. We are no longer tossed about on the waves of our emotional reactions. The third foundation is mindfulness of mind, or consciousness itself. This is the practice of observing the quality of the mind in any given moment. We learn to recognize, without judgment, the mind is scattered, or the mind is focused. We notice the mind is filled with anger, or the mind is peaceful. We become aware of our mental weather patterns, seeing them as temporary states rather than defining who we are. The fourth foundation is mindfulness of dhammas, or mental objects, which means observing our experience through the clarifying lens of the teachings themselves, noticing the patterns of our thoughts and seeing how they either lead towards or away from suffering. With this framework, we can now see how to bring mindfulness directly into the heart of our relationships, transforming them from battlegrounds of the ego into fields of practice. The most profound way we do this is through the art of deep listening. Ordinary listening is rarely listening at all. It is an egoic activity. We are either filtering what the other person is saying through our own opinions, comparing it to our own experiences, formulating our counter-argument, or simply waiting for them to stop talking so we can say what we want to say. Mindful listening is a radical act of generosity. It is the practice of offering another human being the rare and precious gift of our full, undivided, non-judgmental presence. When we listen deeply, our only intention is to understand. We listen not just to their words, but to the feelings beneath the words. We listen to what is not being said. We quiet our own inner narrator and create a silent, spacious container where the other person can feel safe enough to truly express themselves. To be listened to in this way is a profoundly healing experience. It communicates a message far more powerful than words. I see you. I hear you. You matter. So many conflicts could be dissolved before they even begin if we could learn to offer this gift of silent, mindful presence to one another. This naturally leads to the practice of mindful speech. If mindful listening is about receiving, mindful speech is about offering. Mindfulness creates that sacred gap between the impulse to speak and the action of speaking. In that gap, we can ask ourselves a few simple questions. Is what I am about to say true? Is it kind? Is it beneficial? Is this the right time to say it? This simple, mindful checklist can prevent immense harm. It transforms speech from a reactive weapon used to defend the ego into a conscious tool used to create connection, clarity, and healing. We can even practice mindfulness of the other person directly. When you are with a loved one, instead of seeing them through the thick, blurry filter of your history with them all, your memories, judgments, and expectations tree, to see them with beginner's mind, right now, as if for the first time. Notice the specific color of their eyes in this light. Notice the way their mouth moves when they speak a certain word. Notice the posture of their body. Be present to the actual, living, breathing human being in front of you, not the static character that exists in your head. This practice can reawaken a sense of wonder and appreciation for people we think we know inside and out. This is how mindfulness transforms the ordinary into the sacred. It is not a practice reserved for a meditation cushion. It is a way of inhabiting every moment of our lives. The Vietnamese Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, spoke often of this. An unmindful cup of tea is a lost moment. We gulp it down while our mind is 1,000 miles away, thinking about our troubles. We don't experience the tea at all. But a mindful cup of tea can be a profound experience of peace and presence. You feel the warmth of the cup in your hands. You see the steam rising, the rich color of the liquid. You smell its aroma before you even taste it. You take a sip and are fully present for the sensation of warmth and flavor. In that moment, you are not worried about the future or regretting the past. You are simply there, alive, drinking your tea. That moment is a moment of peace. That moment is a moment of freedom. The same is true for washing the dishes, for walking to the car, for eating a meal. There are no mundane moments, only moments of mindfulness and moments of unmindfulness. Mindfulness, then, is the gentle but revolutionary practice of showing up for our own lives. It is the thread of awareness that we weave through every action, every conversation, every breath. It is the anchor that holds us steady in the storm of our emotions and the foundation upon which all other spiritual progress is built. And as we become more adept at resting in this state of clear, present moment awareness, as we spend more time simply observing our experience without judgment, a certain truth begins to dawn on us, not as an intellectual idea, but as a direct, undeniable reality. We begin to notice, with astonishing clarity, that nothing is solid, nothing stays the same. The breath is flowing in and out, sounds are arising and vanishing, thoughts are appearing and dissolving, the feelings in our body are constantly shifting. The person we were a year ago is gone. The person we are now will be gone in a moment. Through the lens of sustained mindfulness, we come face to face with the deep, pulsing, and universal truth of all existence, the truth of impermanence. As we learn to inhabit our lives with the steady, gentle light of mindfulness, we begin to perceive the world with a new and startling clarity. We watch the breath, and we notice that each one is born, lives for a moment, and then dissolves. We watch our thoughts, and we see them appear from nowhere, linger for a second, and vanish. We watch our emotions, and we witness how a wave of joy can be quickly replaced by a pang of anxiety. Through this sustained, intimate observation, we come face to face with a universal and inescapable law of existence, a truth so fundamental that it governs everything from the life of a star to the duration of a single thought. This is the truth of anicca, the Pali word for impermanence. It is the first of the three great marks of all conditioned existence. The declaration that everything that comes into being is destined to pass away. This is not a uniquely Buddhist concept. It is an objective reality that modern science confirms at every level. We look to the mountains and see symbols of permanence, yet geology teaches us they are being relentlessly worn down by wind and water, rising and falling over eons. We look to the stars and see eternal diamonds on black velvet, yet astronomy teaches us they are violent furnaces, being born and dying in cycles that span billions of years. We look at our own bodies, which feel so solid and constant, yet biology teaches us we are a flowing river of change, with cells dying and being replaced in the trillions. The person you were 7 years ago is, on a cellular level, almost entirely gone. The you that began listening to this sentence is not the same biological and neurological entity that is hearing it end. Everything flows. Nothing is static. Life is not a noun. It is a verb. It is a constant process of becoming and unbecoming. If this is such a fundamental and obvious truth, then why does it cause us so much pain? Our suffering does not arise from the fact that things change. It arises from our profound and deeply ingrained resistance to this fact. The entire universe operates on the principle of fluidity, but the human ego operates on the principle of solidity. We are constantly trying to build a permanent fortress of security in the middle of a relentlessly flowing river. We want our youth and health to be permanent. We want our moments of happiness to be frozen in time. We want our successes to be a final, lasting status. And most powerfully, we want our relationships to be stable, predictable, and forever. We enter into love and friendship with an unspoken, desperate hope that we have finally arrived at a safe harbor, a place of permanent refuge. We cling to people and to the feelings they give us, trying to nail down a wave, to solidify a cloud. This is a war we can never win, a struggle against the very nature of reality itself. Our anxiety, our disappointment, and our grief are not caused by impermanence, but by our clinging to the illusion of permanence. Nowhere is this struggle more acute than in the landscape of our relationships. We are raised on myths of happily ever after, a narrative that frames love as a destination rather than a journey. When the initial, intoxicating phase of a romance naturally shifts into a different, more mature phase, we suffer, believing something has been lost, when in fact, it has simply changed. We fall in love with a person at a particular moment in their life, and we unconsciously expect them to remain that person forever. But they change. Their interests, their beliefs, their bodies, their dream soul are subject to the universal law of anicca. To truly love someone is to love the person they are becoming, not to chain them to a memory of who they once were. To demand that they stay the same is to deny their right to be alive, for to be alive is to change. The same is true for all our connections. A dear friendship that was the center of our world in our 20s may naturally fade as life pulls us in different directions. The family dynamic we knew as a child is forever altered when we become adults, when our parents age, when new members are born. We often suffer from these changes, feeling a sense of loss or even betrayal. But this pain comes from our resistance, from our desire to hold on to a form that has already passed. The wisdom of impermanence teaches us not to cling, but to appreciate. There is a story of a great Zen master walking in a garden with his student. The student points to a breathtakingly beautiful rose and says, "Master, isn't it perfect?" The master looks at the rose, his eyes soft with a deep understanding, and replies, "Yes, and I can already see it dying." To the student, this might have sounded morbidly pessimistic, But the master was not diminishing the flower's beauty. He was seeing it more completely. He was seeing the flower in its totality, which includes its inevitable wilting and decay. This awareness of its impermanence did not make the flower less beautiful. It made its present beauty infinitely more vivid, more poignant, and more precious, because it will not be here forever. Its presence, right now, is a miracle. This is the great gift of embracing anicca. When we truly understand that every moment, every encounter, and every person is impermanent, our experience of life becomes electric with a newfound appreciation. We know that this conversation with our aging parent, this shared laugh with a friend, this quiet moment with our partner, this exact moment will never come again. This knowledge urges us to be fully present. It implores us to put down our distractions, to listen more deeply, to speak more kindly, to forgive more quickly. Why would we waste a precious, unrepeatable moment on a petty argument or a sullen mood? Impermanence is the universe's most profound teacher of gratitude. It transforms our relationships from something we take for granted into a series of sacred, fleeting moments that we have the privilege to witness. This wisdom also provides us with a powerful tool for navigating loss. When a relationship ends, whether through a breakup or the natural course of life, our suffering is magnified by our belief that a solid, permanent thing has been shattered. It feels like a failure, a tragic destruction. But if we understand impermanence, our perspective shifts. We can see the relationship not as a broken object, but as a beautiful river that flowed through our life for a time. It nourished us, it taught us, it reflected the sky for us. And now, as all rivers do, it has changed its course. We can feel sadness for its passing, but we can also feel immense gratitude for the time we spent by its banks, without feeling the need to dam it up or curse it for not flowing forever. Anicca allows us to grieve with more grace and to let go with more peace, because we are no longer fighting reality. To embrace impermanence is to learn to dance with the fundamental rhythm of the universe. We can either stand rigid and try to resist the music, in which case we will feel stressed, anxious, and ultimately broken by the force of the flow. Or we can learn the steps of the dance, to move with the rhythm of change, to appreciate the beauty of each passing note without clinging to it. The choice is ours, and as we become more adept at this dance, as we watch the endless, impersonal flow of our own experience, thoughts changing, feelings changing, our body changing, our relationships changing, a question of profound significance begins to arise. If everything I identify with is in constant flux, if nothing is stable, then who or what is this I that is witnessing it all? If all the components of the self are impermanent, can the self itself be permanent? This deep inquiry dissolves our last and most cherished illusion of stability and leads us directly to the heart of the next great mark of existence, the liberating and radical truth of not self. Having embraced the universal truth of impermanence, seeing that everything we can perceive is a flowing, changing river, we arrive at the final and most formidable fortress of the ego. We may accept that our bodies change, our feelings are fleeting, and that our relationships will evolve. But surely, we think, there must be a constant someone who is witnessing all this change. There must be a permanent, unchanging I at the center of it all, the thinker behind the thoughts, the feeler of the feelings. This belief in a core, separate self is the ego's last stand. The Buddha's teaching of anatta, or not self, takes direct aim at this final refuge, and in doing so, offers the most profound and complete liberation possible. The teaching of anatta is perhaps the most challenging and counterintuitive aspect of the path, and it is crucial to understand what it is not. It is not a nihilistic declaration that we do not exist or that life is meaningless. It is a precise and subtle description of how we exist. It states that if we search for a permanent, independent, unchanging soul or self as the core of our being, we will not find one. What we call a self is not a solid entity, but a dynamic process, a convenient name for a temporary gathering of phenomena. Just as impermanence revealed that we are not a static noun but a flowing verb, not self, reveals that there is no single, separate author of that verb. There is simply the flowing itself. One of the most brilliant illustrations of this teaching comes from an ancient text called The Questions of King Milinda. The story describes a dialogue between a wise Buddhist monk named Nagasena and a sharp-witted Indo-Greek king named Milinda, who wished to test the clarity of Buddhist philosophy. The king begins by asking the monk his name. "I am known as Nagasena, Your Majesty," the monk replies. "But this is only a designation, a name. There is no permanent person to be found here." The king, a keen intellectual, is intrigued by this and challenges him immediately using a classic, logical argument. He points to Nagasena's own chariot, parked nearby. "Venerable sir," the king asks, "if there is no person, then who owns this robe you wear? Who eats the food you are given? Let us speak of your chariot. How did you arrive here?" "By chariot," Nagasena replies. "Excellent," says the king. "Then please, define chariot for me. Is the chariot the wheels?" Nagasena calmly replies, "No, Your Majesty." "Is it the axle then? Or the frame? Or the reins?" To each question, Nagasena answers, "No, Your Majesty." "Then," the king presses, "is the chariot something separate and apart from all of these components?" "No, Your Majesty," the monk replies. Finally, the king, thinking he has trapped him, declares, "Then you have spoken a falsehood. There is no chariot." It is now that Nagasena turns the king's own logic back upon him. He calmly asks, "Your Majesty, how would you define the chariot?" The king, reflecting for a moment, replies, "It is on account of the wheels, the axle, the frame, the reins, and all its other parts, that the designation, the convenient name chariot, is used." "Precisely," Nagasena says, his voice filled with a gentle wisdom. "Just so, Your Majesty. It is on account of the 5 aggregates or physical form, our feelings, our perceptions, our mental formations, and our consciousness, that the convenient designation, the name Nagasena, is used. But if you search for a permanent, independent Nagasena, apart from these constantly changing processes, no such entity can be found." The king, struck by the clarity of the analogy, had no further argument. This parable powerfully reveals the heart of the anatta teaching. The self is a conceptual designation, not an ultimate reality. It is a name we give to an ever-changing assembly of physical and mental processes. But the implications of this insight are not merely philosophical. They are profoundly liberating, especially within our relationships. The ego's primary mode of operation is to extend its territory through the concept of mine. If there is a solid I, then there must be things that belong to me. But the wisdom of anatta dismantles this entire structure. If there is no solid, separate I, then there can be nothing that is truly mine. Consider what this means for our encounters. The possessiveness that poisons so many relationships is rooted in this sense of ownership. We think, this is my partner, this is my friend, this is my child. We see them as extensions of our own ego, possessions that add to our sense of identity and security. This is the root of jealousy, control, and the deep fear of loss. But Anatta reveals that this person does not and cannot belong to you. They are their own independent stream of causes and conditions. You cannot own a river. You cannot possess a cloud. To realize this is to set them and yourself free. You can no longer lose what you never, in reality, owned. Furthermore, this insight is the ultimate antidote to taking things personally. When someone criticizes you or insults you, the feeling of being hurt arises because we believe a solid me has been attacked. But Anatta invites us to investigate. Who exactly was attacked? Was it your body, your feelings, your opinions? All of these are impermanent processes. The person who criticized you was reacting to their own mental projection of you, a character in their mind. And the you that feels wounded is another character, a collection of defensive thoughts and unpleasant feelings arising in your own mind. It is, as the Zen masters would say, one empty boat bumping into another. When we see this clearly, the sting of insults and the inflation of praise begin to lose their power. We are no longer defined by the opinions of others, because we have seen that the self they are judging is a fiction to begin with. A common fear that arises is that if there is no self, then love is impossible. Who is there to love, and who is there to be loved? But the truth is the very opposite. It is only when we see through the illusion of the self that true, unconditional love becomes possible. Love that arises from the ego is always a contracted, anxious affair. It is about my needs, my security, my happiness. It is transactional. We love another because of what they do for me. But when the I begins to dissolve, love is no longer about getting something. It transforms into a natural, radiant expression of our interconnectedness. The warmth of metta and the trembling of karuna flow freely when they are no longer obstructed by the walls of a separate, defensive self. Love ceases to be a feeling of ownership and becomes the very action of connection, a dance of two flowing processes, unburdened by the heavy demands of me and mine. The teaching of Anatta is the final key that unlocks the prison of the ego. It is the deepest letting go. By seeing that we are not a static noun, but a dynamic verb, we align ourselves with the flowing, interdependent nature of the universe. We have now journeyed through the three marks of existence, the universal characteristics of all conditioned things. We have seen that they are impermanent, that clinging to them leads to unsatisfactoriness, and that they are empty of any solid, independent self. These are not three separate philosophies, but three facets of a single, profound truth. They all point to the fact that reality is not as it appears to our ordinary, deluded senses. Things lack a solid, separate, inherent existence. This fundamental emptiness of a separate self-nature is not a void or a nothingness, but a dynamic, luminous potential. It is the gateway to the most subtle and profound teaching in this tradition, a truth that underlies all the others, the wisdom of emptiness, or sunyata. As we stand at the culmination of our inquiry into the nature of existence, having passed through the gateways of impermanence and not self, we arrive at the most profound and subtle teaching of all. It is the insight that underpins and unifies everything we have explored. It is the ultimate expression of wisdom, the very heart of the path to liberation. This is the teaching of sunyata, or emptiness. This single word has been the source of more misunderstanding than perhaps any other in spiritual philosophy. The mind, conditioned to think in terms of things and nothingness, immediately recoils, imagining emptiness as a cold, nihilistic void, a bleak abyss where nothing exists and nothing matters. But this is the most tragic misinterpretation. Sunyata is not a declaration of nothingness. It is the most radical and liberating declaration of interconnectedness. It does not mean empty of everything. It means empty of a separate, isolated, independent self-nature. And because things are empty of a separate self, they are therefore full of everything else. It is the key that unlocks the mystery of how the universe exists and functions, and how we can finally find our true place within it. To grasp this, let us return to the simple image of a flower, but this time, we will look with the eyes of Sunyata. We hold up a rose. We see its form, its color, its fragrance. It appears to be a distinct, self-contained object, but we ask the question, what is this rose? We look deeply, and we see the sunshine. The sunshine is not in some far-off place. It is right here, in the vibrant color of the petals, having been transformed by photosynthesis. Without the sun, there is no rose. Therefore, the sun is inside the rose. We look again, and we see a cloud. The cloud is not just in the sky. It is here in the moisture of the stem, the coolness of the leaves. Without the cloud, there is no rain. And without rain, there is no rose. Therefore, the cloud is inside the rose. We continue to look, and we see the earth, its minerals providing the very substance of the flower's body. We see the farmer who planted the seed, the generations of ancestors who cultivated this particular variety. We see the iron that was mined to create the farmer's spade. We see the baker who made the bread that gave the farmer the energy to work. We see the entire cosmos in a vast, intricate dance of causes and conditions, converging in this one simple form. Now, we try to find the separate rose. We mentally remove the sunshine, the cloud, the earth, the farmer, the minerals. What is left? Nothing at all. The rose is entirely made of non-rose elements. It has no separate, independent core. It is empty of a private, self-sufficient identity. But this emptiness is not a void. It is precisely this emptiness of a separate self that allows the rose to be so full of the entire universe. Emptiness is not the absence of the flower. It is the very reason the flower can exist at all. It is the truth of its radical, total interconnectedness, its interbeing with everything else. This same truth applies to us. We look at another person, the person we are encountering in this moment. We see a distinct form, we hear a name, we perceive a personality, we see a self. But if we look with the eyes of wisdom, we see that this person, just like the rose, is empty of a separate identity. We see their parents and their grandparents in the shape of their eyes and the texture of their hair. We see the food they ate for breakfast, the wheat grown in a field, the rain that watered it. We hear the language their culture gave them, the ideas they absorbed from books and conversations, the habits formed from a lifetime of experiences. If we were to remove all these non-person elements, what would be left? We would find no solid, independent core, no separate them. We would see that the person standing before us is a unique, temporary manifestation of the entire cosmos. To meet another person is to meet the universe in disguise. This realization is the ultimate ground of compassion. When the hard, artificial boundary between self and other becomes transparent, the very notion of harm becomes absurd. How can the wave harbor ill will towards another wave when it knows both are nothing but the ocean? How can the flower wish harm upon the sun when it knows the sun is the source of its own life. When you see that the person who has angered you is composed of the same sun, earth, and water as you are, that their consciousness is part of the same stream of being, how can you maintain the illusion of them as a separate enemy? To harm them is, in the most literal sense, to harm yourself. To harm them is to throw a rock at the cosmic mirror in which you yourself are reflected. This understanding of emptiness is not a dry, intellectual concept. It is a profound shift in identity, from an isolated fragment to an integral part of a seamless whole. The Heart Sutra, one of the most essential Mahayana texts, captures this profound paradox in its most famous line: "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form." Let us try to unpack this. Form is emptiness is the analytical wisdom we have just explored. It means that all the forms we perceive are bodies, other people, tables, trees. When we investigate them deeply, we find that they are empty of any solid, independent, self-contained existence. This is the wisdom that deconstructs our illusions. But the second half is just as crucial. Emptiness is form. This means that emptiness is not a blank, nihilistic void that exists somewhere else, separate from our world. Emptiness is right here, manifesting as this very world of form and color. The only way the universe can express its boundless, empty nature is through the particularity of form. The only way the ocean can be known is by its waves. The emptiness of the rose is the very thing that allows it to manifest as a beautiful, fragrant, and temporary form. Paradoxically, it is because things are empty of a fixed, permanent self that they can change, interact, and come into being at all. If a rose had a solid, unchanging rose essence, it could never grow from a seed or decay back into the soil. Emptiness is not the opposite of life. It is the very condition that makes life, in all its vibrant, dynamic, and impermanent glory, possible. What does this mean for our relationships? It means that your relationship, which has a former history, shared memories, a name, is simultaneously empty of a fixed, permanent essence. Because it is empty, it is not a static thing. It is a living, breathing process, capable of change, healing, and infinite new beginnings. To see the emptiness of the relationship is not to devalue it. It is to release it from the prison of our rigid expectations and allow it to be the dynamic dance that it truly is. When we begin to live with this understanding, the felt sense of our own being begins to change. We move from a contracted, defensive posture to one of openness, curiosity, and ease. A huge amount of our mental energy is normally consumed by the project of ego defense, protecting our reputation, asserting our opinions, managing impressions, worrying about what others think of me. When we realize there is no solid self to defend, this immense psychological burden simply falls away. It is a profound exhalation, a deep letting go of a struggle we never needed to be in. We can begin to engage with the world not as a threat or an opportunity for self-enhancement, but with a sense of wonder and playfulness. We take ourselves, our dramas, and our precious identities far less seriously. The understanding of emptiness is the final dissolution of our alienation. It is the realization that we are not, and have never been, separate from the whole. We are not a lonely fragment fighting for survival in a hostile universe. We are the universe itself, waking up to its own nature in this particular human form. Every person we meet is another expression of this same unified reality. The encounter with another is no longer a meeting of two separate egos, but a moment where the universe gets to look at itself through two different sets of eyes. This is the spaciousness of emptiness, It is not a void, but a plenum, not nothing, but everything. Having touched this ultimate ground of being, this truth of our shared identity, how can we now look back upon those we have considered our enemies, those who have caused us the most pain? Armed with this new vision, we can see them in a completely different light, not as adversaries, but as our most challenging, and therefore our most precious teachers. Having journeyed to the summit of wisdom and looked upon the vast, interconnected, and empty nature of reality, we can now descend back into the messy, complicated, and often painful landscape of our own lives, but with new eyes. We carry with us the understanding of karma, the warmth of compassion, and the liberating insights of impermanence and not self. Armed with this vision, we can now turn to face the ghosts of our past and the challenges of our present. The difficult people, the painful relationships, the encounters that have left the deepest scars on our hearts. We can now look at those we have labeled enemy, betrayer, or tormentor, and ask a revolutionary question. What if they were never our enemy at all? What if they were, in fact, our most powerful, most effective, and most profoundly disguised spiritual teachers? This is not a suggestion to condone harmful behavior or to deny the reality of our pain. It is a radical reframing of our life's narrative. It proposes that the universe, in its deep and impersonal wisdom, does not send us adversaries to punish us. It sends us teachers, perfectly designed to help us uncover the exact places where we are most stuck, most asleep, and most in need of awakening. The people who trigger us the most are not our antagonists. They are our curriculum. They are living, breathing assignments sent from the University of Life to help us earn our degree in wisdom and compassion. The people we thought were our greatest curse may, in the end, turn out to be our most profound blessing. Let us examine this curriculum in more detail. Consider the teacher of patience. This is the person who constantly irritates you. It might be a colleague who works slowly, a family member who always knows how to push your buttons, or a neighbor who is consistently inconsiderate. Every time you interact with them, you feel that familiar flash of frustration and anger. From an egoic perspective, they are a nuisance, a constant source of stress. But from the perspective of practice, they are a masterclass in patience and mindfulness. They are a living mindfulness bell, ringing again and again, calling your attention to your own inner fire. They provide you with countless daily opportunities to practice observing your anger without acting on it, to notice the tightness in your jaw and choose to relax it, to feel the heat in your chest and meet it with a cool, conscious breath. Without them, you might live under the illusion that you are a patient person. They, in their difficultness, reveal the truth of your own impatience and give you the perfect conditions in which to train it. Then, there is the teacher of non-clinging. This is perhaps the most painful teacher to encounter. This is the person who breaks your heart, the partner who leaves, the friend who betrays your trust. The pain they inflict is searing and can feel unsurvivable. The ego's story is one of victimhood and devastation. But what is the lesson this teacher delivers with such brutal force? It is a direct, visceral, and unforgettable teaching on the truth of impermanence. Or Anika, they shatter our deepest and most cherished illusion, the belief that we can find ultimate safety and permanent security in another human being. They teach us, in a way that no book or sermon ever could, that we cannot own another person, that feelings change, and that the only reliable source of well-being must be found within our own hearts. They force us to let go, to stand on our own 2 feet, and to find a strength we never knew we had. They are the harsh but necessary masters, who teach us how to open a clenched fist? And what of the teacher of not self? This is the person who criticizes you, questions your competence, insults your character, or dismisses your ideas. Their words feel like a direct assault on the very core of who you are. The ego immediately leaps to its own defense, marshalling arguments, justifications, and counterattacks. But this teacher is offering us a priceless gift, a direct, real-time investigation into the illusion of the self, or anatta. Their provocations force us to ask, who exactly is this I that feels so wounded? Is it my body, my thoughts, my reputation? As we investigate, we see that what feels attacked is not a solid entity, but a fragile, constructed self-image. This teacher holds up a mirror to our own pride, our own vanity, and our own deep attachment to being seen as right or good. They give us the chance to practice seeing the empty boat, to let the arrows of criticism pass through a self that we know is not solid, and to find a humility and resilience that is not dependent on the praise or blame of others. Seeing our life in this way precipitates a fundamental shift in our orientation to suffering. We move from asking the victim's question to asking the student's question. The victim's question is, why is this happening to me? This question is always rooted in the ego's sense of personal injustice. It casts us as the central character in a cosmic drama, a target singled out by a cruel and unfair universe. It is a question that leads only to feelings of helplessness, bitterness, and resentment, and it has no truly satisfying answer. But the student's question is, what is this trying to teach me? This question changes everything. It immediately presumes that the experience, no matter how painful, has a purpose. It contains a lesson. It transforms us from a passive object to which things happen into an active, engaged learner. It restores our sense of agency and turns every obstacle into a stepping stone, every setback into a setup for a comeback. This simple change in our inner inquiry is one of the most powerful spiritual practices we can ever undertake. From this new perspective, an extraordinary alchemy becomes possible. We can begin to feel a sense of gratitude, not for the pain itself, but for the profound growth the pain made possible. Consider a devastating heartbreak from your past. At the time, the pain may have felt all-consuming, a wound you thought would never heal. But look back now, perhaps years later, with the clarity of hindsight. Can you see how that experience forged you? Can you see that it forced you to become more independent, to discover your own hidden strengths, to clarify what you truly value, and to develop a deeper capacity for compassion for others who are suffering? The person you are today, wiser, stronger, more resilient, was born in the very fire of that suffering. From this vantage point, it is possible to feel a genuine gratitude for the lesson, and by extension, for the unwitting teacher who delivered it. It is not the gratitude one feels for a gift, but the respect one feels for a harsh but brilliant coach who pushed you beyond what you thought was possible. Our life story, then, ceases to be a sad tale of the wounds we have collected. It becomes an epic of the wisdom we have cultivated. We are no longer defined by what has been done to us, but by what we have chosen to learn from it. The difficult people in our lives are not obstacles on our path. They are the path. They are the sandpaper that smooths our rough edges, the fire that tempers our steel. They are the disguised bodhisattvas, the enlightened beings who have taken on a difficult form in order to offer us the precise lessons we need for our own liberation. Having learned to see even our most painful encounters in this sacred light, a new question arises. If these profound and difficult relationships are our advanced curriculum, what about the countless other interactions that make up our days? What of the fleeting, seemingly meaningless encounters with strangers in a checkout line, with drivers on the road, with faces in a crowd? Are they merely background noise? Or do they, too, hold a hidden meaning in the great school of awakening? Having learned to reframe even our most painful encounters as lessons from our greatest teachers, we now turn our gaze from the dramatic peaks of our interpersonal lives to the vast, seemingly unremarkable plains of our daily existence. For most of us, life is not a constant series of profound conflicts and resolutions. It is a succession of ordinary moments, a stream of fleeting, anonymous interactions. We pass hundreds of people on the street. We stand in line with strangers. We exchange a few words with a cashier. We share a brief, silent space with others on a bus or a train. Our tendency is to dismiss these moments as meaningless filler, as the insignificant background noise between the important parts of our story. But the wisdom of interconnectedness reveals a different truth. In the intricate, shimmering web of dependent origination, there are no insignificant threads. Every encounter, no matter how brief or anonymous, is a node in this cosmic tapestry, a ripple with the potential to affect the entire ocean. To see the truth of this, we can look at these fleeting encounters through the lens of karma. They are, in essence, constant, flowing microdoses of cause and effect. Think of the small, positive interactions you experience. The driver who waves you into a line of traffic. The person who holds a door open for you when your hands are full. The barista who offers a genuine smile and wishes you a good day. From a karmic perspective, these are not random acts of niceness. They are tiny, wholesome fruits, ripening from seeds you planted in the past. A kind word you offered someone last week. A moment of patience you showed a struggling colleague. A generous thought you held for a stranger. These small acts of goodness come back to you in these fleeting forms. Learning to mindfully receive these small gifts, to notice them and feel a moment of silent gratitude, is a practice in itself. It acknowledges the benevolent workings of the web and plants a new seed of appreciation in the field of the mind. More importantly, every fleeting encounter is a fresh opportunity to plant new, wholesome seeds. This is where we take our practice off the meditation cushion and into the laboratory of the world. Our daily life becomes our monastery, and every stranger becomes our fellow practitioner, offering us a chance to train the heart. The person fumbling for change in front of you in a long line is not an obstacle. They are a perfect, low-stakes opportunity to practice patience, to notice the arising of irritation, and to let it pass without comment or a frustrated sigh. The brief exchange with a postal worker is a chance to practice mindfulness, to put down your phone, make eye contact, and be fully present for that one human being for 30 seconds, acknowledging their existence beyond their function. The most powerful practice we can engage in during these moments is the silent radiation of metta, or loving kindness. As you walk down a busy street or sit in a crowded public space, instead of being lost in your own thoughts or seeing others as obstacles in your path, you can use the moment to silently offer them a wish of well-being. Looking at the tired face of the woman sitting opposite you on the train, you can silently think, "May you be happy. May you be free from your worries." Seeing a group of laughing teenagers, you can offer, "May your joy continue." Seeing a person who appears angry or distressed, you can offer, "May you find peace." This practice costs you nothing. It requires no outward action. Yet, it completely transforms your inner state from one of isolated self-absorption to one of active, benevolent connection. The world ceases to be a cold, alienating place and becomes a field for the cultivation of your own warm heart. In wishing for the happiness of others, you yourself become happier, We must never underestimate the power of these seemingly insignificant acts. We live in a world where we can never truly know the impact our energy has on another person. There is a beautiful and poignant story that illustrates this truth. It tells of a man whose life had crumbled. He had lost his job, his family had left him, and he had fallen into a deep, hopeless depression. One grey morning, he decided he could not go on. He left his small apartment with the firm and final intention of ending his own life. As he walked towards his destination, the world seemed like a silent movie playing behind a thick pane of glass. He felt completely invisible, a ghost already detached from the world of the living. People rushed past, their faces set with their own purpose, their own worries. No one saw him. His path took him past a small park, where an old man was sitting on a bench. This old man had a simple, private practice. Each day, he would sit on that bench for an hour and make a point of offering a genuine, warm, and unconditional smile to every single person who walked by. He expected nothing in return. It was his small, silent gift to the world. As the desperate man walked past, his eyes met the old man's. The old man offered him this smiler, simple, radiant expression of human warmth, acknowledging his existence without judgment or demand. For the man walking to his death, this tiny, unearned flicker of connection pierced through his suffocating fog of despair. It was a single, unexpected spark in an otherwise total darkness. The smile conveyed a simple, powerful message. I see you. You are here. You are a part of this world. That moment of connection was just enough to make him hesitate. It planted a seed of doubt in his certainty. It was the thread that pulled him back from the precipice, leading him to turn around and seek help instead. The old man on the bench never knew that his simple, mindful act of offering a smile had saved a life. We, too, can never truly know the ripple effects of our own small moments of presence and kindness. The patient word, the gentle smile, the moment of shared eye contact. These acts may seem like tiny drops in an ocean of indifference, but they have the potential to land in the precise place in another person's heart where they are needed most. They are a testament to the fact that there are no meaningless encounters. Every person we meet is a part of our path. Every moment is an opportunity to practice. Peace is not a grand destination we arrive at after years of striving in isolation. It is a quality of presence, a warmth of heart that we can discover and offer right now in this fleeting, precious exchange with a stranger. When we truly begin to live this way, a profound synthesis occurs. We learn to see our most difficult antagonists as our hidden teachers, providing the friction we need for our greatest growth. And we learn to see every anonymous stranger as a chance to practice patience, to offer a silent blessing, to feel our shared humanity. When we see every being as a teacher and every moment as an opportunity to practice, what kind of person have we become? We have, in fact, begun to walk in the world with the heart and mind of a bodhisattva, a being whose entire life is dedicated to the well-being and awakening of all. As we weave together the threads of our journey, the understanding of karma, the practice of compassion, the wisdom of impermanence, not self, and emptiness, a new and extraordinary vision of human potential begins to emerge. We have learned to see our enemies as our teachers and fleeting strangers as opportunities to practice. We have moved from a contracted state of self-preservation to an expansive state of interconnectedness. The path now leads us to its most noble and inspiring summit, an ideal that represents the full blossoming of the human heart and mind. This is the ideal of the Bodhisattva. To understand the profound significance of the Bodhisattva, It helps to first understand another ideal in Buddhism, that of the Arhat, or the worthy one. An Arhat is a being who has diligently walked the path, studied the teachings, and through immense personal effort, has extinguished the fires of their own greed, hatred, and delusion. They have cut the chains of karma that bind them to the cycle of rebirth and have realized the supreme peace of nirvana for themselves. They have, in the classic metaphor, successfully crossed the raging river of samsara, the world of suffering, and have reached the safety and serenity of the other shore. This is an incredibly rare, noble, and worthy attainment, the logical culmination of a path focused on personal liberation. But the Mahayana tradition, the great vehicle of Buddhism, introduced an even more expansive and compassionate ideal. This is the Bodhisattva, a word that means enlightenment being. A Bodhisattva is a being of immense wisdom and compassion who has also journeyed to the very edge of the river of suffering. They stand on the brink of final nirvana, with the peace of the other shore beckoning to them. They could take that final step, disappearing into a bliss that is beyond all suffering. But at that very last moment, they pause. They turn their head and look back at the churning, tumultuous river, and they hear the cries. They hear the cries of all the other beings still struggling in the current, drowning in their ignorance, pulled under by their sorrow. Moved by an unbearable compassion and an unbreakable love, the Bodhisattva makes a heroic choice. They turn their back on their own final peace and take a vow that echoes through space and time. I will not enter final nirvana. I will remain in this world of suffering, life after life, until every last being, down to the last blade of grass, has been brought safely across to the other shore. And the driving force behind this incredible vow is a state of mind known as bodhicitta, which can be translated as the mind of enlightenment or the awakened heart. It is considered the most precious jewel on the spiritual path, the elixir that transforms an ordinary person into a child of the Buddhas. Bodhicitta has two aspects. The first is the aspiration, the deep and sincere wish to attain perfect, complete enlightenment. The second, and what makes it unique, is the motivation. We seek this perfect enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. The entire focus of the spiritual life pivots 180 degrees. The primary question is no longer, how can I escape my suffering? It becomes, how can my life, my practice, my efforts, and even my own eventual enlightenment serve to alleviate the suffering and bring about the happiness of all? This is the great shift, the movement from the small, constricted self to the boundless heart that embraces the entire universe as its family. To guide them on this immense journey, the Bodhisattva adopts a set of great vows which serve as a compass for a life of ultimate meaning. While there are many versions, their essence can be captured in 4 profound commitments. The first vow is, sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. The word save here means to liberate, to help awaken. This vow can seem impossibly vast and grandiose. How can one person save billions of beings? The practice of this vow, however, is intensely personal and immediate. We practice it with the one being who is right in front of us. We vow to save our partner from their anxiety by offering them our deep, mindful listening. We vow to save our child from their frustration by meeting them with boundless patience. We vow to save the irritated cashier from their stress by offering them a moment of genuine human kindness. The salvation of all beings begins with the compassionate encounter we are having right now. The second vow is Desires are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. This is the Bodhisattva's commitment to the inner work of purification. They recognize that their own greed, anger, and ignorance are the source of the poison they might otherwise spew into the world. They vow to tame their own monkey mind, not just for their own peace, but so that they can become a clear and reliable refuge for others. They work with their own attachment so that they can be more generous. They work with their own anger so they can be a source of peace. Their inner practice ceases to be a selfish project and becomes a profound act of service to the world. The third vow is, the Dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them. Dharma here can mean both the teachings of the path and the nature of reality itself. This is a vow of lifelong learning and the cultivation of wisdom. A bodhisattva knows that compassion without wisdom can be ineffective or even harmful. They commit themselves to understanding the deep truths of emptiness, karma, and dependent origination, not for the sake of intellectual pride, but so that they can gain the skillful means necessary to truly help others navigate the complexities of their lives. They seek to become a wise and skillful spiritual friend to all. The fourth and final vow is, the Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to attain it. This is the ultimate aspiration, the vow to achieve perfect Buddhahood. But again, the motivation is entirely altruistic. The Bodhisattva seeks to become a Buddha not for the personal bliss of final nirvana, but because a fully enlightened being is the most powerful and effective guide imaginable. They want to attain the highest state of being in order to have the infinite compassion, the boundless wisdom, and the limitless skillful means to perfectly serve the needs of every single being. The embodiment of this immense ideal is beautifully captured in the mythology of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. The story tells that Avalokiteshvara made a vow to listen to the cries of every suffering being in all the realms of existence and would not rest until all were free. For countless ages, he worked tirelessly, but one day he looked out upon the universe and saw that, despite his efforts, the number of suffering beings was still infinite. For everyone he helped, countless more seemed to emerge. The sheer scale of the world's dukkha overwhelmed him, and in a moment of profound despair, his head shattered into 1,000 pieces. The Buddha of boundless light, Amitabha, saw his plight and, out of his own compassion, reassembled him. But instead of giving him one head, he gave him 11, the better to see suffering in all 10 directions and above. And instead of 2 arms, he gave him 1,000 arms, and in the palm of each hand was an eye. This way, he would have both the wisdom to see the specific needs of every being and the skillful hands to reach out and offer the precise help that was needed. This myth is a powerful metaphor for the Bodhisattva path. Our ordinary, limited self will break under the weight of the world's suffering. It is too small a container. But when we dedicate our lives to the welfare of others, when we open our hearts with the force of bodhicitta, we are transformed. We are reassembled into something greater. We develop 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes. A kind word is one of our hands. A patient, listening ear is another. An act of generosity, a moment of forgiveness, a shared insight. These are all the skillful hands of the Bodhisattva in action, reaching out to soothe the world. To live with a Bodhisattva heart does not mean we must perform grand, heroic deeds. It means infusing our ordinary lives with an extraordinary intention. A mother patiently tending to her sick child, thinking, "May my care bring you comfort," and may all sick children be cared for, is practicing with the heart of a bodhisattva, a teacher staying late to help a struggling student, thinking, may this understanding dawn for you, and may all beings be free from ignorance, is walking the bodhisattva path. A friend listening without judgment to another's pain, an activist working for justice, an artist creating beauty that uplifts the human spiritual. Of these can be expressions of bodhicitta. Our life is no longer about what we can accumulate for ourselves. It becomes about what we can offer from ourselves. Our relationships are no longer about what we can get, but what we can give. The difficult person is no longer our enemy, but the suffering being who most needs our compassion. Our entire life becomes our field of service. This is the culmination of our path. It is the final and most beautiful answer to the problem of suffering. We do not ultimately find freedom by escaping the world, but by turning towards it with a brave and boundless heart, recognizing that our own liberation is inseparable from the liberation of all. It is this bodhisattva ideal that gives our lives the deepest possible meaning and purpose. And now, standing at this peak, with this vast, compassionate vision as our guide, we are finally ready to turn and look all the way back to the beginning of our journey. We are ready to answer the question that first set us upon this path, but with a completely new and transformed understanding. Why do we meet the people we meet? We began this long and winding journey with a simple human question, one that arises in the quiet, unguarded moments of our lives. Sitting in a crowded room, we glance up and our eyes meet those of a stranger, and for a fleeting moment, a spark of inexplicable recognition or a wave of baseless discomfort passes between us. In the aftermath of a joyful new friendship or a painful betrayal, we are left staring at the ceiling in the dark, asking the universe, why them? Out of all the billions of people on this planet, why did our paths cross? After our travels through the deep landscapes of karma, compassion, impermanence, not self, and emptiness, we can now return to this fundamental question, but we are no longer the same person who asked it. We return with new eyes, a new heart, and a new capacity to understand the profound and multi-layered answer. On the most immediate and practical level, the answer is karmic. We meet the people we meet because of the intricate and inescapable law of cause and effect. Our lives are not a series of random collisions, but a precisely choreographed dance governed by the seeds we have planted in the past. The person who appears in your life offering kindness, support, and opportunity is the living embodiment of a wholesome seed you planted long ago, now ripening into a beautiful fruit. They are, in a sense, a gift from your past self. The difficult person who challenges you, who frustrates you, who brings you pain, is the manifestation of a different kind of seed, an unwholesome action from the past now coming to fruition. They are not a punishment, but a karmic debt coming due, a balancing of the universal ledger. But this encounter is not just about the past. It is the crucial, pivotal moment where your future is created. Your response to this person, whether you meet their kindness with gratitude or indifference, whether you meet their aggression with more aggression or with patience, is the very act of planting the seeds that will determine the nature of your future encounters. We meet them, therefore, to settle the accounts of our history and to consciously write the script of our destiny. On a deeper psychological level, the answer is that we meet them to see ourselves. Every person who enters our life acts as a perfect mirror, reflecting back to us the hidden aspects of our own being. In the people we admire, the friends we love, the mentors who inspire us, we see a reflection of our own highest potential. their courage, their kindness, their wisdom. These qualities resonate with us because the seeds of those same qualities exist within our own hearts, waiting to be watered. They show us the person we could become. Even more profoundly, in the people who repel us, the ones who trigger our deepest anger and judgment, we are often seeing a reflection of our own shadow, the parts of ourselves we have denied, repressed, or refused to acknowledge. The arrogance we cannot stand in a colleague may be reflecting a hidden pocket of arrogance within us. The neediness we find so irritating in a family member may touch upon our own deep-seated, unmet needs. These difficult people are our unwilling therapists, holding up a flawless mirror to our own unresolved issues, giving us the precious, if unwanted, opportunity to see ourselves completely and to integrate all that we are. We meet them to become whole. On the most practical, moment-to-moment level, the answer is that we meet them in order to practice. The spiritual path is not an abstract theory. It is a lived, embodied reality. Life itself is the training ground, and every single encounter is a session in the gymnasium of the heart and mind. We do not need to retreat to a monastery to find opportunities for awakening. They are waiting for us in the grocery store line, in the morning traffic, and across the dinner table. We meet the slow driver in front of us to practice patience. We meet the grieving friend to practice compassion. We meet the successful rival to practice sympathetic joy, the happiness in another's good fortune. We meet the person who has wronged us to practice the profound and liberating art of forgiveness. We meet the cashier at the checkout counter to practice mindfulness, offering them our full, undivided presence for a single, respectful moment. Life is not a waiting room where we prepare for some future spiritual event. The event is now. The practice is this. We meet them because our soul, our deeper consciousness, knows that we need the practice. Finally, on the ultimate and most profound level, the answer is that we meet them to awaken from the dream of separation. The very question, why did I meet them, presupposes that there is a separate I that meets a separate them. But the deepest wisdom of the path, the truth of emptiness, reveals that this is an illusion. There are no two separate, solid souls colliding in space. A true soul encounter is not a meeting of two things, but a recognition of one reality. It is the universe experiencing itself through two different windows. It is the ocean rising up as two waves that momentarily touch, sharing the same water, the same essence. The boundary between your mind and their mind, your suffering and their suffering, your joy and their joy, is porous and ultimately unreal. To see them is to see a part of yourself. To harm them is to harm yourself. To love them is to love yourself. Therefore, the ultimate reason you meet them is to realize that there is no them. There is only a unified field of being, manifesting in a beautiful, tragic, and infinitely diverse dance of form. The encounter is a sacred opportunity to wake up to this truth. Let us return, one last time, to that coffee shop. You are sitting there, and you see the stranger across the room. But now, your vision is transformed. You do not just see an isolated person. You see a web of infinite causes and conditions, their parents, their ancestors, their breakfast, their secret hopes, their hidden fears. In their eyes, you see a reflection of your own humanity, your own vulnerability, your own longing for happiness. You feel a thread of karmic connection, an ancient and invisible link that has drawn your two streams of consciousness to this precise point in space and time. You see a perfect opportunity to practice, to silently offer a wish of goodwill. May you be happy. And looking even deeper, you see the luminous, empty, and impermanent nature of their being, a temporary wave on the great ocean, and you recognize it as the very same nature as your own. The question, why them? A question born of a sense of separation, quietly dissolves. It is replaced not by an answer, but by a feeling of wonder, of reverence, of profound and peaceful connection. You did not need a reason, you just needed to truly see. We have traveled a great distance together, on a journey that began with a simple, haunting question, born from the confusion and pain of our human encounters. We sought to understand why our lives are touched by such specific souls, why some bring us comfort and others bring us conflict. Our path took us through the ancient law of karma, revealing that no meeting is an accident, but an echo of a past that we ourselves have created. We looked unflinchingly at the nature of suffering, not as a punishment, but as a universal condition, arising from the fever of our own inner thirst. We then discovered that a path to the cessation of this suffering exists, a path of practice where we learn to tame the restless mind, to see through the phantom of the ego, and to cultivate the boundless, healing qualities of compassion and forgiveness. Finally, our journey led us to a vast and luminous vision of reality itself, a world not of separate things, but of profound interconnection, where every being is empty of a solid self, yet full of the entire cosmos. And so now we stand at the end of our exploration, ready to answer the question that began it all. The answer, we can now see, is not a simple name, a date, or a reason that can be found outside of ourselves. The truth is that the final, complete answer to the question, why do we meet the people we meet, lies entirely within you. You cannot control the karmic currents that bring another boat to bump against yours. You cannot dictate who will enter the story of your life, nor what role they will play. But you have absolute, unshakable power over the only thing that truly determines your peace and your freedom, the quality of your own mind and heart. You have the power to choose your response. Peace is not the result of finding perfect people or curating a life free from pain. That is an impossible dream. True peace is the result of cultivating an inner wholeness, a heart so spacious and a mind so clear that it can meet any experience and any person with wisdom and grace. Every soul you encounter is a messenger. The person who brings you joy is a messenger from your own past goodness, reminding you of the beauty you are capable of creating. The person who brings you pain is a messenger from your own unhealed places, showing you exactly where your work of awakening still lies. Each one, without exception, arrives bearing a single precious gift, the opportunity to know yourself more deeply and to wake up from the dream of separation. You are not a victim of your life's encounters. You are not a helpless cork tossed on the ocean of fate. You are the student, and life is your compassionate and sometimes challenging teacher. You now possess the tools, the anchor of mindfulness, to keep you steady in the present moment, the warmth of loving, kindness, and compassion, to protect your heart and open it to others, the sharp lens of wisdom, to see through illusion, and the gentle solvent of forgiveness, to release the burdens of the past. The journey does not end here. It begins. It begins with your very next breath, and with the very next person you meet. Look at them, truly see them, and instead of asking the universe, why them? Ask your own wise heart the question that will transform your entire life. What are you here to teach me?